Chapter 1890. Wang Ling could see that the pattern on this steward's body wasn't from the eternal world, but was clearly the mark of the old world. At the bottom of the pattern was a surging wave woven from golden immortals and blue silk threads. Several tentacles from the old world poked out of the surface of the sea in a strange, beautiful arc. Wang Ling was all too familiar with these tentacles from the old world, because not long ago, he had hunted down a few tentacle-like creatures from Dopey from the old world for newborn Wang Yuan to satisfy her hunger. Such unbridled behavior was enough to show how overbearing and rampant the Peng family was on Penglai. There was only a bit of time left before the sun completely set. Wang Ling, Lotus Sun, and the others had bribed everyone along the way to make it to the last round of interviews for the day. Looking at the time, a lot of people knew that they were the last group of people for the day. But the people behind them didn't immediately disperse, even though they knew that they wouldn't be able to make it today. The young talents who had come to propose got out of their cars one after another, intending to join in on the fun. After all, the last person to be interviewed was a nouveau riche who had bribed his way to the front with money. A lot of people wanted to see the Peng family pour cold water on this nouveau riche. There was a huge gap between the rich and the poor in the eternal world, but there were still plenty of rich people. Given the Peng family's status on Penglai, ordinary nouveau riche definitely wouldn't be interested in them. So when Wang Ling and the others arrived, this steward's expression didn't look good. He had been observing Wang Ling and the others' motorcade for a long time. They had actually bribed their way here with money? Just as the housekeeper of the Peng family revealed a look of disdain, Zhang Zibai took a step forward and took out a jade box from his sleeve. He pretended to respectfully open the jade box and handed it to the housekeeper with both hands. "Hello, housekeeper. My young master is here to propose marriage in hopes that housekeeper can lead the way. This is a small token of my appreciation, I hope you won't mind." Heh, the steward's disdain didn't diminish, and he smiled contemptuously. Heh, did they think his Peng family was a vegetarian? He hated this kind of nouveau riche the most. He was the dignified steward of the Peng family, and he was a somewhat famous figure on Penglai who didn't care how many rich people there were. A mere extraterrestrial nouveau riche actually dared to stand in front of him. Wait. This was, at first, he did not look carefully at the contents of the box. After a glance, he realized that it was an elixir, and it was no ordinary elixir. When the elixir in the jade box emitted a dazzling luster, the Peng clan's general manager's hand speed was extremely fast. He immediately closed the lid of the jade box. This alertness was actually because he didn't want the treasures and pills in the box to be seen by other busybodies. As the steward of the Peng family, his eyes were extremely sharp. He clearly knew that this was an ancestral Tao pill. This was a rare medicinal pill for breaking through to the Tao Father realm. Only great emperors could refine it. In reality, among the people who came to propose today, there were indeed many who came in the name of the 3-star, 6-star, or 9-star imperial family. However, it was the first time that the Peng family's chief steward had seen someone who used the Tao ancestor pill as a stepping stone. Although he didn't like this nouveau riche in front of him, he couldn't help feeling a little hesitant in the face of this Tao ancestor pill. For him, this kind of greeting gift was like giving him a pillow when he was sleepy. He had been stuck at the Tao God realm for a long time, and was just a step away from breaking through to Tao ancestor. However, he had always lacked comprehension. If he didn't break through with external help, he was afraid that his realm would stop here for the rest of his life. In the next moment, his expression softened a little as he personally accepted the jade box and stepped aside. "Young master, you're too polite. I will kindly accept this gift. Please come in, young master, but there are still a few more tests. If you can pass all of them, you can officially marry my family's young lady. If you can't, young master, you can consider becoming a son-in-law or directly leave." Understood. Inside the carriage, Lotus Sun took a deep breath and stepped out of the exclusive royal carriage of the 9-star imperial family under everyone's gazes. To tell the truth, she didn't feel any stage fright. Before she had fallen in love with Wang Ling and learned to keep a low profile, she had once enjoyed being the center of attention. But now, it could only be said that she had returned to her old profession. As the future young master of Huagua Water Curtain Group, she had an innate ability to control the overall situation and confidence. This kind of bearing couldn't be considered ordinary. Coupled with the exquisite makeup that Lu Qingyi and Yu Yuqing had put on Lotus Sun, her immortal aptitude was already enough to stun everyone present. Which territory is this imperial family from? How come I've never seen this person before? Look at the patterns on his body, which combine the styles of the 4 territories. He definitely has an extraordinary background. Maybe he's favored by all 4 emperors at the same time. My God, there's someone like this in the world? The busybodies on the street who had joined in on the fun immediately started talking among themselves. To be honest, when he saw Lotus Sun in person, even the director of the Peng family was stunned for a moment. He believed himself to be very knowledgeable and knew almost all the famous families in the 4 regions, but he didn't remember such a person at all. To have the patterns of the 4 territories directly tattooed on the same robe, this alone was enough to prove that this person's identity was no small matter. Before young master enters, please tell me who you are. My name is Wang Rongxia, Lotus Sun answered without hesitation. Her identity was completely fake, and had been created by the core members of the battle sect who had impersonated the 4 emperors, so everything about this fake identity had been done flawlessly. Lotus Sun had already thought of a fake name. This was made up of the name of the character she had impersonated, Xia Xinyan, the homonym of her own name, and the surname of the person she liked. Wang Rongxia. The director of the Peng family carefully chewed on this name and began to do a carpet search in his mind, but it was as if he had lost his memory and couldn't remember anything. No matter how much he rummaged through the memories of those prestigious families, he couldn't find such a person. Of course, he also began to suspect that Lotus Sun was a fake identity. But even if it was a fake identity, the price to pay was a little too high. A Dao ancestor pill as a stepping stone. What kind of wealth was this? It didn't seem fake at all, thus, the steward of the Peng family finally didn't stop her, and welcomed her in. So it's young master Wang Rongxia. Please come in, young master. In any case, there were still a few more tests, and he didn't think Lotus Sun would be able to pass them. The person in charge of the first test was a middle-aged man who looked like a scholar. He sat in front of a table and propped up his chin with his fingers crossed as he looked at Lotus Sunday, sweeping a glance at the chair in front of the table. He smiled meaningfully. Young master, please take a seat. If you want to marry my family's young miss, the first test is a discussion of Tao. Okay. Lotus Sun nodded. Back in the carriage, East Great Emperor had already guessed this part. The middle-aged man nodded, then began to ask, there are countless paths of cultivation. May I ask, young master, how should you find your own path? Lotus Sun thought for a moment, then answered, there are no paths in this world, but when there are people, there are paths. As soon as she said this, the whole audience burst into thunderous applause. The middle-aged man was clearly stunned when he heard this. Good answer, young master. Then may I ask, if someone is unable to break through after a long time and can't feel any hope, what would you think? Hope is attached to existence. With existence, there is hope, and with hope, there is light. Good, easy to understand. The middle-aged man was already completely stupefied. He scratched his head, then continued to ask, may I ask, young master, how do you understand life and death? Lotus Sun, dead life has already decayed. I am very happy with this decay, because I know that it isn't empty. The middle-aged man was shocked. Young master is so young, how can you say such a thing? Lotus Sun smiled. Is this also a question? The middle-aged man shook his head. No, it's just a personal question. Young master, you don't have to answer. Lotus Sun said, it's all because my master taught me well. The middle-aged man, may I ask, who is young master's master? Which sect is he from? Lotus Sun smiled. I don't belong to any sect, and people call me Brother Sun. Chapter 1891. Wednesday, January 7th, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun didn't return all night and didn't report to school the next day, which attracted the attention of the 2 families. Sun Yiyuan paced around anxiously. He only had one granddaughter, but but she disappeared without a trace. Most importantly, as far as Sunny Yuan knew, Lotus Sun had always been extremely obedient and well-behaved, so there was no way she would disappear for no reason. Now that she had disappeared, however, Sunny Yuan began to feel a strong sense of crisis. The incident with the Shadow Stream killers last year was still vivid in his mind as if it had happened yesterday. His heart was a mess and he didn't know what to do at the moment. He had called Odd Zhua and found that he had also disappeared. Using his connections, he had finally found grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Senior Immortal, I only have one granddaughter. You have to tell me the truth, do you really not know where she went? Sunny Yuan paced back and forth in front of grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's desk in the head of Battle Sec's office with his hands clasped behind his back. He was sweating profusely because of his ancestral imagination genes, and he was thinking of a lot of terrible things. Don't worry, old man, I've already sent people to look for her. Miss Sun is naturally safe and sound, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said reassuringly. In fact, he was also privy to this matter. How could he, as the head of Battle Sect, not know where so many core members had been mobilized? As for why they hadn't returned overnight, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's guess was that they might have run into some trouble, so he had called Wang Ling last night and realized that he couldn't get through to him. Thus, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's guess was that Wang Ling had to be with this group of people on a similar mission. So with Wang Ling around, there was no need to panic at all, it was only a matter of time before they were dealt with. They just needed to be patient and wait for them to reply on their own. Senior Immortal, do you have any basis for this? My Rongrong isn't even at the Golden Core stage. In this big world, it's too easy for Foundation establishment cultivators to get into accidents. If someone bullies her, or... Just as Sunny Yuan was thinking of something even more terrifying, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hurriedly interrupted him. Old man, don't think too much, he sighed in his heart. It was only because Old Man Sun didn't know Lotus Sun's true battle strength that there were a lot of things that he couldn't explain clearly. A Foundation establishment cultivator was being bullied? Of course I don't exist, your granddaughter has Ling Zhenren's backing, it's already good enough that she doesn't bully others. This was the #1 Foundation establishment stage cultivator on Earth. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could still vividly remember how he had cut down the old god of the god race with one slash back then. Back then, it hadn't even reached the level of 9 cores Mysterious Sea. Now, the Mysterious Sea had 9 Heaven's Path magic cubes fused into it. It was practically unstoppable. However, when he answered the phone earlier, he had already expected that Grandpa's son would do this, so he had already thought of a way to comfort him. After fiddling with it for a bit, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal took something out of his sleeve. It was a Dao talisman that contained enormous spirit power, and Sunny Yuan's eyes immediately lit up. This is Death Substitute Talisman. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. Actually, this was the surplus that Wang Ling had asked the 2 Life and Death Heavenly Dao brothers to set up last time. It was just that he was now using it as an excuse to comfort someone. He said, I came across this by chance and wanted to give it to Miss Sun as a gift. But Miss Sun wouldn't accept it, so I thought of a way to secretly bind it to her. In other words, the owner of this Death Substitute Talisman is Miss Sunday. The Death Substitute Talisman hasn't been activated yet, which proves that Miss Sun is definitely safe. We just need to increase our search and wait for a reply. Hearing this, Sunny Yuan finally let out a long sigh of relief. That's good, his nerves eased, and he even forgot to ask about the true origin of this Death Substitute Talisman. After all, it was almost impossible to find anyone in this world who had the ability to draw this kind of Dao talisman. Looking at Sunny Yuan's relieved expression, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had mixed feelings in his heart. Looking up at the sky, he felt that Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch, whom he had sent out earlier, should already have news from Wang Ling. As a real clone, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's thoughts and consciousness were completely independent, but he could still sense the original body. Thus, he had very easily found the apartment building where Li Xian lived, and from the security guard at the entrance, he had more or less guessed what had happened. Because this apartment building was now part of Huaguo Water Curtain Group's property, Crispy Noodle's Dao monarch's first guess was that Wang Ling and Lotus Sun had definitely come here to investigate this Li Xian, and had definitely found something in the apartment building. Choosing a small, secluded corner near the apartment building, Crispy Noodle's Dao monarch enlarged his spiritual senses, and relying on his amazing senses, he used a kind of teleportation technique to accurately pinpoint Wang Ling's location. At the same time, the three members of the Eternal Imperial family, the Skeleton Prince, the Lion Man and Meng Lioli, who had been standing guard next to Wang Ling, were all shocked. After a moment of embarrassment, Meng Lioli looked at Crispy Noodle's Dao monarch, who looked very much like Wang Ling, and asked with a look of sudden realization, "You're Ling Jinren's clone?" "No, you look more like a real clone." As a member of the Eternal Imperial family, Meng Lioli had a certain level of knowledge. Seeing that these three people were concentrating on standing guard for Wang Ling, Crispy Noodle's Dao monarch relaxed a little. He could tell that these three people didn't have any ill intentions, otherwise they would have already attacked him the moment he landed. "I understand, you must be worried because you couldn't find Ling Jinren, right? Don't worry, Ling Jinren is fine. He just followed the path of this mysterious character into the world it's in." The Lion Man's rough voice rang out. They were truly very serious as they worked exceptionally hard to protect Wang Ling, abiding by their duty as guards. Crispy Noodle's Dao monarch couldn't help but laugh at their hard work. But now that they had finally found Wang Ling's whereabouts, he heaved a long sigh of relief. He immediately took out his phone, intending to report back. The text had been sent to grenade-throwing senior Immortal, Father Wang and Wang Muyu. "I found Ling Ling. I knew this kid would be fine," Father Wang said after looking at his phone. "Then what did the school teacher say?" Mother Wang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "This child, he didn't even tell us that he wasn't coming back tonight. Even if he's trying to safeguard world peace, he should at least have sent a text. He probably ran into some kind of trouble and couldn't keep track of the time." "But it's fine," Father Wang said. "If there really is a problem, our Anwan can go and help at any time." "Yeah." On the other side, Wang Wan had already put on a diaper and was ready to go. Chapter 1892. Wang Muyu had played his part these days and obeyed all orders. He just wanted to see Wang Ling and Lotus Sun as soon as possible. In the end, the days that he had been longing for passed by one after another, and he hadn't expected them to stand him up again in the end. He wasn't an insensible child, and immediately knew that Wang Ling and Lotus Sun had probably run into some trouble. When he thought of the extremely realistic dream he had a few days ago, his rainbow dragon heart immediately tensed up. The dragon clan's prophetic dreams might not be as accurate as Wang Ling's, but the chances of them hitting the mark weren't low either. He dreamed of someone stabbing Wang Ling in the back. A white knife went in and a red knife came out, directly piercing Wang Ling's heart from behind, and then stirring in his chest in a strange spiral. Wang Muyu had been startled awake by this nightmare, drenched in sweat. He was well aware that this was a prophecy, and that Wang Ling was about to be assassinated. Fortunately, he had received a reply from Crispy Noodle's Dao monarch. He knew that his father wasn't acting strangely, it was just that he might be entangled in some troublesome matter, and would need some time before he could extricate himself. Wang Muyu breathed a sigh of relief and looked out of the window. In the huge Sun family's castle and the bedroom that was the size of several living rooms, he was the only one here. The feeling of longing and loneliness surged in his heart in an instant. The high-tech toys and all kinds of imported snacks and drinks which Old Man Sun had meticulously prepared in the bedroom had all become tasteless at that moment. The maids in the Sun family's castle all had standard professional smiles. Wang Muyu could see that no matter what kind of question he asked, the other party had a standard set of words to answer, making it impossible for him to vent his anger on this group of people. Wang Muyu rang the bell, and very quickly, a maid pushed open the door and came in. Looking steadily out the window, he asked, "When will Grandpa's son be back?" The maid thought for a moment, then replied patiently, "Young Master Muyu, don't worry. Old Master may or may not be on his way back. We can only find out after a few hours or even longer when the gate of the castle is pushed open." Wang Muyu, sure enough, the maid's reply was the same as if she hadn't said anything. Although he'd long since figured out the language system of this group of servants, Wang Muyu's heart was still on the verge of collapse. All he needed to know was whether or not he would be back, or when he would be back. In the end, this group of people gave him the answer of Schrodinger's cat. Even their replies were filled with philosophical thoughts. I'm going out. Wang Muyu sighed. He couldn't wait any longer and prepared to leave. Young Master Muyu, it is very dangerous for you to go out now. It was already so late. Why don't I just wait here obediently? If you go out. Just when the maid wanted to continue arguing with him, Wang Muyu interrupted her bluntly. Okay, then I'll listen to you. I won't go out. That's good. The maid nodded in satisfaction and left the bedroom. Wang Muyu knew that he wouldn't be able to leave if he applied normally, so he could only trick the maid. Now that he knew Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch's location, his current plan was to leave a clone in the Sun family's ancient castle so that his real body could go out and meet up with Wang Ling. In the end, just as he was about to move out, a familiar and piercingly cold aura pierced through the air outside the Sun family's ancient castle, and Wang Muyu was almost instantly on high alert. He couldn't retract the 7-colored dragon horns on his head, and under the sudden pressure, they instantly grew out from the 2 horns on his forehead. They glowed with prismatic colors like colored glass, and were a beautiful fluorescent color in the night, which was especially eye-catching. It's you. Wang Muyu's eyes were vigilant as he stared in a certain direction outside the window. A figure with dragon wings spread out on his back landed in the moonlight, as if he had been teleported here. The man wore familiar diamond gloves and held a black umbrella, and there was a domineering look in his eyes. Wang Muyu hadn't expected Clear Swamp to choose this time to appear again. The matter with the holy race hadn't been fully resolved, and these resurrected dragon descendants had come to pick a fight again. Wang Muyu was a little annoyed, but the main reason was that his trip had been blocked. He wanted to see Wang Ling, but had been stopped at this time. Crossing his arms, Clear Swamp smiled coldly in the air. Every debt has a debtor. The other people in this castle have nothing to do with me. As long as you come with me, it's fine. Do you still want to get beaten up? Wang Muyu stared at Clear Swamp. You're no match for me on your own. You haven't fully matured yet. As long as that person isn't here, it's hard to say who will emerge victorious. Clear Swamp smiled. It was only then that Wang Muyu realized with a start that this had actually been a plan from the very beginning. Clear Swamp and his group had been taking advantage of the time difference to strike while Wang Ling, Lotus Sun, and the other core members of Battle's sect were in the mysterious text's world. Their real target had been him from the very beginning. It was just that they had been quiet for a long time, which was unexpected. It could only be said that Baijia's personality had changed, and he really wasn't the Baizhi of the past. Such a sophisticated plan required a lot of patience. In the past, Baizhi had been an impatient person who had always thought that he was invincible and would have no problem dealing with Wang Ling. In the end, every time he got anxious, he would be beaten up. Baizhi, on the other hand, had continued to grow after repeated failures and had become an outstanding strategist. This was indeed a little unexpected. At this moment, Wang Muyu's expression became serious. He stared at Jing Zhe, who was hovering in the void, and felt that the other party had become stronger than when he first saw him. It was a change that was close to being reborn. It had not been a long time. According to the human cultivation world, it had not even been a month. Yet, it had grown to such an extent. But Wang Muyu didn't panic. Clear Swamp had indeed become stronger, but while it looked like he had been playing around, he had actually been going through all kinds of hard training. It looks like you don't want to go with me, so I'll have to take you back by force. In the next second, Clear Swamp attacked. He showed no mercy as he attacked with lightning. With a snap of his fingers, thunder surged in the sky, and tens of thousands of lightning bolts turned into a cage that enveloped Wang Muyu. Humph, Wang Muyu snorted. He opened the window and his little body directly jumped out. In the next moment, the magnificent rainbow dragon descendant behind him spread out to form an impenetrable barrier in front of him. The moment the electric cage approached, Wang Muyu directly flapped his dragon wings and smashed it to pieces. He was a master of the 10,000 dragon gene. Wang Muyu thought that Clear Swamp was indulging in fantasy if he thought that this electric cage could trap him. But his expression didn't relax from beginning to end. Looking at Clear Swamp's calm expression, he felt that the other party had come prepared, and there might be even more unexpected things waiting for him. What should I do? Should I look for Auntie Nguyen? That was what Wang Muyu thought at that moment. Chapter 1893. At the same time, in Li Xian's apartment, the three members of the royal family suddenly saw Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch look in one direction with a vigilant expression. Protecting Wang Muyu was part of Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch's responsibility. He had sensed that something was wrong with Wang Muyu, which was why he was so vigilant. But for a real clone, the safety of the main body was always the top priority. Based on the primary and secondary law, he couldn't leave Wang Ling's side now. Even though Wang Ling had 3 guardians of the eternal imperial family, he still didn't feel that this was stable enough. Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch, if you have something to do, you can go first. We're here, the skeleton prince volunteered. However, Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch's indifferent reply was, even with the 3 of you, there's no guarantee that his lord will be safe. The 3 of us are the eternal imperial family. I know. Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch nodded with a smile. But you're still too weak. The skeleton prince and the other 2 felt their hearts wrench when they heard this. They had kindly offered to stand guard here, but in the end, they had been doused with cold water. This was something they had never expected. In fact, it wasn't that Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch looked down on these 3 eternal imperial family members, but had come to this conclusion based on the current situation and repeated comparisons. If they were dealing with an ordinary eternal being, leaving 3 eternal imperial family members alive would definitely be enough. But now that the opponent was from the Dragon Clan, everything was uncertain. The reason why Wang Ling hadn't killed Baizhi earlier was also part of his plan, and Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch was also aware of this plan. Baizhi was now particularly cautious and wouldn't act rashly. Once the other side launched a large-scale attack, he would definitely reveal all his trump cards. In Wang Ling's eyes, the daily harassment was already child's play. Baizhi also knew that this method wouldn't be able to completely destroy Wang Ling, so both sides were now laying out a big plan. Baizhi was waiting for his trump cards to be fully prepared before launching an all-out attack. Wang Ling, on the other hand, was waiting for Baizhi to launch an all-out attack before directly catching them all in one fell swoop, not giving the other side any chance to turn the tables. Looking at the current situation, it was very clear that Wang Muyu was a very crucial element in Baizhi's overall plan. It could be seen from the repeated robberies that the other party had planned. Although he was also waiting for Baizhi to launch an all-out attack, this didn't conflict with protecting Wang Muyu, even if he wasn't used to this little guy's sudden arrival at first. But after spending so much time with him, he felt like he had a younger brother, and started to develop faint feelings that he couldn't bear to part with. Wang Muyu was too much like him, even their fondness for crispy noodle snacks was identical. As the saying went, it was hard to find a bosom friend. Based on this alone, there was no way Wang Ling would let Wang Muyu go. So now that Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch knew about the situation on Wang Muyu's side and couldn't leave, he could only send a text message to old Wang's family to ask for help. Very quickly, he received a reply text message. It was a short voice message. Using the voice-to-text function, it displayed the word, "Ya." This was little girl Nguyen's direct reply on Father Wang's phone. Although the little girl wasn't even half a year old, she was already very familiar with smart devices. A few days ago, she had even gone online to buy the latest celebrity brand diapers for herself. When the courier delivered the diapers home, it was Wang Nguyen who personally signed for them. She directly wrote the word Nguyen on the delivery box with her foot, which horrified the courier. In his heart, he exclaimed that children nowadays were developing too fast, which made him feel a little frustrated. When he was half a year old, he didn't even know how to sit. This little girl actually knew how to shop online and sign for deliveries on her own. This was too outrageous. It's a message from Crispy Noodles. They said something happened at the Sun family's castle. Father Wang looked at Wang Yuan. The child in front of him wasn't even half a year old, but was already shouldering the heavy responsibility of saving the world. For a moment, he was inexplicably moved. He picked little girl Nuan up and looked at her lovingly. "Ah, Nuan, don't force yourself too much. Are you too tired?" Wang Nuan shook her head at lightning speed. Although she was only half a year old, she already understood the principle that with great power came great responsibility. As his younger sister, she could directly feel how good he was to her. It was precisely because of this that now that her big brother was in trouble, she naturally had to help him as his younger sister. But once he left, Father Wang and Mother Wang's safety would be unguaranteed. So before she officially left, Wang Nuan left her shadow behind and hid it under the sofa in old Wang's house. Dragon breath filled the sky as the huge shadow of a dragon soared through the sky. Dozens of lightning dragons coiled high in the sky, and dark clouds covered the sky as if they were about to collapse. This was the power of Pure Zay's core world. Wang Muyu was well aware that he had already fallen into another of Pure Zay's cages, but this was of his own accord. Because it was better than hurting innocent people. As for Jing Zay, he fulfilled his promise. He didn't attack the innocent and only targeted him. Wang Muyu knew that this was a kind of arrogance that stemmed from being a descendant of the dragon clan. Wang Muyu still had a trace of hope for the lightning dragon. He believed that the lightning dragon had a sense of justice and was just being used. At that moment in the core world, Pure Zay was the ruler and god of this world, and possessed an even more powerful sense of oppression. Wang Muyu felt that it would be very difficult to persuade such a god with words. "So I have no choice but to beat you into submission?" At that moment, Wang Muyu sighed in his heart. As Pure Zay had said, he hadn't fully matured yet, but he had improved a lot during this time. Although he had yet to experience what it felt like to fight against the pressure of the core world, he felt that since his dad could ignore the power of other people's core worlds, he could do the same. Buzz! In the blink of an eye, rainbow glass dragon breath surrounded Wang Ling's body, and elemental dragons of different colors hovered around him. Colorful dragon wings spread out at that moment, and with a kind of light, Wang Ling looked like a beautiful splash ink painting with the charm of an ancient dragon. Wang Muyu had grown up. The dragon breath in his body was purer than when he had been born, and Pure Zay was greatly shocked by this astonishing rate of growth. Even though he didn't show it on the surface, Wang Muyu's growth made him suddenly realize why Baizha had racked his brains to snatch Wang Muyu back. At that moment, he understood everything. Because Wang Muyu was the hope for the revival of the Dragon Clan. The hope for the Dragon Clan to become the overlord of the universe again. Chapter 1894. Jing Zay soared into the sky, and the power of thunder surged around him. His divine power was surging, and the pressure was oppressive. In the heyday of the Dragon Clan, a battle between two dragons was an extremely terrible thing, because it would indicate a destructive planetary war. However, in Jing Zay's inner world, with the help of the eternal moon starlight bestowed by Baizha, his entire inner world had been strengthened. It was as if a layer of tempered film had been stuck on it. No matter how turbulent the inside was, the walls of the inner world remained intact. This made Wang Muyu, who had noticed this scene at the same time, feel relieved. With such a strong inner wall, he and Jing Zay could fight without restraint. And it was obvious that Jing Zay came prepared. He did not dare to have the slightest neglect. The seven-colored glazed dragon chi was boiling all over his body, lingering around his small body, making his body appear magical and translucent. He soared into the sky and spat out seven-colored dragon flames. The amazing power of the elements directly swept in front of him, directly meeting the thunder dragon summoned by Jing Zay. At this time, Jing Zay's face did not relax in the slightest. This was a collision between psionic powers. He knew that Wang Muyu was extremely talented. He had condensed the power of 10,000 dragons in his body, had thousands of changes, and could use the abilities of every kind of dragon. This was the most terrifying thing about Wang Muyu. However, in Jing Zay's view, this was also a fatal flaw before he had completely cultivated it. No matter how many dragon abilities one had, it would be useless if they were not proficient in all of them. Obviously, Wang Muyu had also thought of this. Therefore, he had integrated a variety of elemental powers in the dragon flames at the same time, wanting to use this hodgepodge method to make up for the shortcomings. You haven't cultivated to the peak. Everything is in vain. Jing Zhe said coldly. His face was solemn. He had already developed the potential of the lightning dragon to the extreme, and was completely unafraid of the 7-color dragon flame spewed by Wang Muyu. The powerful thunder dragon's breath formed a huge pillar of light, as if the heavens were collapsing, and directly offset the dragon flame spewed by Wang Muyu. It was a combination of a variety of dragon abilities, but it still could not compare to Jing Zhe's top-notch lightning dragon power, which made Wang Muyu unhappy. Compared to the last time, Jing Zhe had made too much progress. Even under the guidance of Bai Zhe, such a growth rate was amazing. At one point, it was even close to surpassing him. Wang Muyu thought that his growth potential was the best among all the dragon descendants, but he didn't expect it to be the same. Of course, putting aside talent, Jing Zhe might have used other methods to quickly raise his level. But in such a short period of time, how was it done? Wang Muyu's expression did not change. His first move had allowed him to know Jing Zhe's strength as a top-notch lightning dragon. In the next moment, he stretched out his small hand and slammed it on the ground with his palm facing down in a half-squatting posture. An explosion sounded out as the ground trembled. Numerous elemental dragons soared into the air from the ground, giving off a heaven-shaking sound as the heavens and earth started to tremble. Seeing this scene, Jingze raised his eyebrows. This was too wasteful. He didn't take spiritual power consumption into consideration at all. No matter how heaven-defying a person was, in modern terms, there was still a blue bar. It was impossible to use skills without limit. Thus, in a duel between top experts, consumption would be taken into account during the fight, and they would calculate the time to release the corresponding ability at the right time, thus setting the pace of the entire fight. Jingze could also tell from his probing that while Wang Muyu's rich and overbearing style of play meant that this little guy had unlimited spirit energy, it was also a sign that he lacked combat experience. Let him exhaust himself, and we'll definitely win. A voice from the other side of the universe rang out in Jing Zhe's mind. It was a familiar man's voice, and if Wang Ling had been present, he would have easily recognized this person. On the other side of the universe, a huge dragon the size of a star was entrenched there. Emitting holy moonlight, it issued commands from the depths of the infinite Milky Way as it remotely commanded Jing Zhe. This was a type of long-range micro-control. Bai Zhe had entered the field. Jing Zhe didn't obstruct Bai Zhe's judgment, and instead used his own methods to provide support and assistance. In order to divert Wang Ling's attention, he had painstakingly planned this eternal chess game in order to bring Wang Muyu back. Wang Muyu was the most crucial chess piece in his plan. Today, he had chosen to let Jing Zhe take action, and he himself was personally in command. This was a determined attitude. With someone backing him, Jing Zhe naturally had nothing to fear. He opened his black umbrella, and at that moment, activated its other form. Wang Muyu's eyes were shaken. He hadn't expected this black umbrella to actually have a bow form. The moment the black umbrella opened, the ribs rearranged themselves under Jing Zhe's control to turn into a pitch-black bow and arrow wrapped in black lightning. The handle of the umbrella separated on the spot, and the hook at the end spun to perfectly latch onto the black umbrella's bowstring, directly turning it into a giant arrow. The endless power of lightning jumped and surged on the bow and arrow, as if it had absorbed the power of lightning from the entire universe. Then, boom! With a deafening explosion, Jing Zhe abruptly fired the bow and arrow that the black umbrella had turned into with tremendous power. Space shattered inch by inch as it whistled through the air, and even the inner wall of the core world started to shake under the tremendous impact. If it wasn't for Bai Zhe's support in secret, the core world might have already collapsed. With astonishing power, the giant arrow streaked across the sky with an overbearing momentum as it directly pierced through Wang Muyu and the elemental dragon that he had summoned. Then, guided by Jing Zai's lightning, the lightning arrow returned to his hand in the blink of an eye, becoming a perpetual motion, like a bullet that would never run out of bullets. The elemental dragons that Wang Muyu had summoned came in all shapes and sizes, and filled this small space. However, Jing Zai had used his black umbrella to transform it into a bow and arrow to destroy them one by one, which was something Wang Muyu had never expected. To Wang Muyu's horror, Jing Zai's arrow did not simply pierce through his elemental WYRM. Instead, it seemed to have absorbed the power of the elemental WYRM every time it was retracted. The power was like a stream that was constantly being superimposed on the arrow. By the time Wang Muyu saw through Jing Zai's intentions and wanted to retrieve the elemental dragon, it was already too late. Jing Zai, who had already dealt with the last elemental dragon, had already aimed the arrow at Wang Muyu. Then, he pulled the bow fully and released it. Chapter 1895. Wang Muyu was in danger. At that moment, in East Great Emperor's body, Wang Ling was lost in thought for a moment in front of the Peng family's headquarters on planet Penglai. This was a sixth sense for danger. Even though Wang Ling was now in a world that transcended time and space, he could still sense it. Wang Muyu was now like a younger brother to Wang Ling. Although they didn't usually communicate much, there was already a faint feeling that he couldn't let go of. Wang Ling had always been very wooden, and didn't understand what this feeling was, but he knew that he would never just send Wang Muyu to Baizhi. In fact, Wang Ling had already made plans for Wang Muyu's safety. After Qin Zong and Xiang Yi had taken up the positions of guest elders in Battle Sect, the first secret mission they had received was actually to protect Wang Muyu. At that moment, even if Wang Ling didn't say anything, these two strongest bodyguards could sense this danger that transcended time and space. Something happened to little brother Muyu, Qin Zong said in the team voice spell. In order not to disturb Lotus Sun's marriage proposal test, he could only talk to Xiang Yi alone. Did Baizhi make a move? Xiang Yi asked. That's right. Judging from his combat strength, he's still a dragon descendant. Qin Zong frowned slightly. I now have reason to suspect that we were arranged to go to eternity as part of their plan. They want to take the opportunity to attack little brother Muyu. Speaking up to this point, Xiang Yi, who was playing the role of North Emperor, suddenly smiled. Unfortunately, they found the wrong person. After all, it was Wang Ling's job to protect Wang Muyu, so Qin Zong and Xiang Yi were extremely serious. As they talked, they used their own heaven-defying methods to find out most of the situation in the modern cultivation world. Yo, this kid is pretty arrogant. He even uses a bow and arrow. Interesting. When Xiang Yi saw Jing Zai transform that black umbrella into a bow and arrow, he started to get a little excited. Qin Zong seemed to have guessed what Xiang Yi was going to do. So, you want to snipe him? I do that a lot. Xiang Yi scratched his head. And my bullets will never rust. Although it's a different timeline, I think it shouldn't be hard to snipe him. Nguanzhenren seems to be ready to make a move as well. I just need to buy some time. In the past, Xiang Yi's sniping targets were a lot of cutting-edge alien technology. But now, the target of sniping was actually a bow and arrow classified as a dragon descendant magic weapon. This new experience also made Xiang Yi eager to try. His Nine-Yang Divine Sword was a powerful super-heavy sniper rifle. He wondered what would happen if he were to face off against this bow and arrow of an immemorial dragon descendant. Thinking of this, Xiang Yi couldn't stay any longer. He quickly said to Qin Zong, "Excuse me, I'll go find a seat. Little brother Muyu is in danger. Do you want me to stand on the side? Can I give you some assistance?" Qin Zong asked. "No, I'll be back soon." Xiang Yi shook his head and said. Boom. On the other side, Jing Zai's diamond glove and the black umbrella that had transformed into a bow glowed at the same time. The two most powerful dragon descendant artifacts surged with endless lightning, and at the same time, they emitted a kind of holy moonlight. That was the power that Baizhi had bestowed upon him from afar. When this arrow was shot, all things were destroyed. It was as if a god had descended onto the world, as if it could pierce through everything. Wang Muyu's expression changed. He could feel the power contained in this arrow. It was truly astonishing. The moment Jing Zhe let go, the heavy lightning pressed forward like overturning seawater. It had the effect of moonlight tracking, which was an additional ability of Bai Zhe's. No matter how Wang Muyu dodged, this arrow would still stab him. This was an arrow with 100% hit rate. It was only then that Wang Muyu realized the difference in tactics between him and Jing Zhe. It wasn't that his strength was inferior to Jing Zhe's, but it was completely due to his lack of combat experience that caused the situation before him. More importantly, Wang Muyu hadn't expected the black umbrella in Jing Zhe's hand to have such an effect. It could transform into a bow. This was an unstoppable attack. Wang Muyu knew that he would definitely be hit, but he still put up a last-ditch struggle. Otherwise, the arrow would hit his vitals. He worked hard to calculate the power and distance of the arrow. Finally, at the moment of impact, he used the gravity dragon's ability to reconfigure the surrounding space's gravity to buy himself some time. However, the power of Jing Zhe's arrow was too strong. This kind of delay was like trying to put out a burning cart of firewood with a cup of water. He couldn't block the huge power of this arrow. The arrow directly pierced through his left shoulder, creating a thunderstorm. 7-colored glass dragon blood instantly gushed out, splattering all over the ground. You can't escape. Jing Zhe's face was expressionless. He raised his hand, and lightning surged in his palm. Once again, he used the power of lightning to call back the arrow. This time, the arrow was mixed with the power of Wang Muyu's glass dragon blood, causing the arrow's ability to reach a new level. He didn't want to kill Wang Muyu, but he brought out 100% of his combat power. Jing Zhe knew very well that this was the only way he could seriously injure this talented little guy who had fused with the 10,000 dragon gene and brought him back. At this time, Wang Muyu had already been hit by his arrow. As long as the second arrow hit, Wang Muyu would no longer be able to resist. Is the revival of the dragon race that important to you, Jing Zhe? Wang Muyu asked. He didn't understand why Jing Zhe would pursue this so painstakingly. He didn't even hesitate to bend his knees and be driven by evil people. He felt that there was still a sense of justice in Jing Zhe's body. He shouldn't have been used by Baizhi like that. The glory of the dragon race was already history. The destruction of the dragon race had nothing to do with modern cultivators. Wang Muyu didn't understand why this beautiful era had to be destroyed. Why did they have to return to the world of hegemony, plunder, survival of the fittest, and the supremacy of strength? You've been in contact with human cultivators for too long. Naturally, you won't understand. This is also the reason why I have to bring you back, Jing Zhe said. His expression was calm, and there was no emotional fluctuation. He was like an emotionless killing machine, aiming his arrow at Wang Muyu. You don't have any chance. After saying that, he let go of his hand. However, the moment he let go of his hand, suddenly, a brilliant silver beam of light seemed to have pierced through the end of the universe. With the aura of endless time, it pierced straight through. This was a beautiful silver bullet. Jing Zhe's pupils instantly dilated as if there was an earthquake. He had never thought that there would be such a bullet shooting at him from a strange angle. Boom! The next second, accompanied by an explosive sound, the silver bullet accurately hit the arrow wrapped in lightning and moonlight. Chapter 1896. This silver bullet had come from beyond the sky with astonishing accuracy, and it had pierced through the core world. Before it hit the arrow, it had directly punched a huge hole in the outer wall of the core world. Who could have shot a bullet with such power? Even Jingzhe was shocked. He had never seen such powerful modern cultivation technology. In order to ensure that there were no obstacles in the way of the Dragon Clan's revival, Jingzhe had previously assessed the level of modern human cultivation society in all aspects. This wasn't the power of any heavy sniper rifle on Earth at all. He couldn't figure out who on earth could fire such a powerful bullet to stop him. But judging from the method, this person clearly wasn't Wang Ling. He and Baizhi had discussed Wang Ling's behavior in depth before, and this was someone who would slap someone at the slightest disagreement. Long-range sniping like this clearly wasn't Wang Ling's style. This is a bullet fired from eternity. In the boundless and deep universe, Baizhi's ethereal voice came from the planet formed by the enormous moonlight dragon's body, which rumbled like a great Tao bell in the universe, making Jingza's heart fill with awe. Dragon Lord. Don't worry, my venerable self is by your side. This bullet is just a way to stall for time. Baizhi spoke with great confidence. After all, his opponent wasn't Wang Ling, and he believed that he had a way to deal with this situation. With Baizhi's backing, Jingza was clearly much more confident. He took a deep breath and pulled back the bowstring in his hand. A second arrow was fired at Wang Muyu, but at the same time, the silver bullet from beyond the sky arrived again with great precision. With a swoosh, it cut through the air and pierced the outer wall of the core world, sharp and precise. At the same time, Baizhi also acted. From a distant position, he infused moonlight into Jingza, which turned into a bright moon behind him. In a split second, endless cold air surged forth, as if it had the mystical power to freeze the highest heavens. The silver bullet slowed down significantly under this freezing power. Wang Muyu could see that this wasn't a simple freeze, but a type of moon god ice that could completely freeze time and space. This was one of Moonlight Dragon's most powerful skills. When they first met, Baizhi hadn't shown this power. Now, however, he was able to control it. This shocked Wang Muyu. He was clearly a usurper who had nothing to do with the dragon race. He had merely taken the identity of a moonlight dragon, yet he had been able to comprehend the dragon race's ultimate technique to this level. Boom! Wang Muyu opened his mouth and spat out a glass-like flame. This was originally the dragon race's restraining technique to neutralize moon god ice. When the moon god ice met the colored glass flame, one could clearly feel the moon god ice evaporating under the colored glass flame's heat. However, Wang Muyu's proficiency with the colored glass flame was clearly not high, and one could feel that he was already working very hard to spit out fire. However, Baizhi's moon god ice was a level higher. Under the powerful freezing power, the colored glass flame's restraining effect was like trying to put out a cart of firewood with a cup of water. Is this the pride of the dragon clan that you spoke of, Jingza? Wang Muyu was furious. As a descendant of the dragon race, he had to watch as someone who didn't belong to the dragon clan usurped the throne. This made him very angry. He asked loudly in a childish voice. His voice seemed to emanate from his bones, and it had a natural and clean quality to it. This caused Jingza's gaze to change slightly. However, he quickly recovered his cold expression and stared at Wang Muyu. As long as the dragon clan can rise again, it doesn't matter to me who the leader is. He replied to Wang Muyu. Crack. Everything happened in an instant. Under Baizhi's cover, the moon god ice spread along the trajectory of the second silver bullet. It froze everything around it and froze the bullet in the air. However, the next second, there was a huge explosion in the air. Jingza hadn't expected the second bullet to be a spell trap. As soon as it was stopped by an external force, it would immediately explode. A huge mushroom cloud rose up from the core world. The powerful shockwave affected the arrow's trajectory, causing Jingza's second arrow to miss. I knew it would be like this. In the distance, Xiang Yi sneered. He held the nine-yang divine sword in his hand, and his expression relaxed. His mission had been completed. After all, he was in the past, and it was too difficult to snipe across time and space. It would be better to leave the rest to spiritual Master Nuan. After the spirit explosion, Jingza and Baizhi waited in place for a while. The third bullet that had traveled across time did not arrive. Baizhi knew clearly that the number of bullets in this time was limited. The third bullet would not arrive in a short time. It seems that no one will stop us anymore. He sighed and gave Jingza the next order. Now was the best time to capture Wang Muyu. Jingza nodded slightly. He called back the arrow and put his hand on the bowstring again. However, unlike before, there seemed to be an artifact tied to the arrow's head. It was a giant sealing net called the 10,000 scale dragon net. It was a magic artifact that Baizha had specially created to imprison Wang Muyu. It was made from tens of thousands of dragon scales, and the moment it appeared, it produced an incomparably dazzling divine light. This net was also a dragon descendant magic artifact, and it was at the light level. In order to capture Wang Muyu, Baizha had definitely gone to great lengths. This was the last attack, and unless Wang Ling came in person, Jingza felt that no one could stop it. Blood seeped from the corner of Wang Muyu's mouth. He hadn't given up, and was releasing the last of his dragon chi to resist. However, with the 10,000 scale dragon net here, it was useless no matter what he did. Chi. Another arrow. And it was an arrow with the 10,000 scale dragon net. At the same time, from an extremely far distance, Wang Ling's gaze fell on the first scene at the same time. But he didn't make a move, because he knew very well that Jingza's arrow would be stopped. With a puff, a green light flew down from the distance like an aurora and directly resisted the power of the two dragon descendant magic artifacts, the arrow and the 10,000 scale dragon net. Damn it, why is there another one? Jingza was a little impatient. One person after another jumped out to stop him, which made him extremely annoyed. Then he calmed down and saw clearly what was stopping his two dragon descendant magic artifacts. He was shocked. Because it turned out to be a green blade of grass. Is this a sword spirit? In a trance, Jingza frowned, feeling like he had seen this familiar scene before. Yeah. In the next second, a small body broke through the air and directly smashed through the outer wall of the inner world with its diaper-covered butt, forcing its way in. He looked at the baby girl who had suddenly barged in. At that moment, Jingza was horrified. Chapter 1897. The moment Leng Ming and Wang Wan arrived, Jing Zhe cursed in his heart, because in just a few short minutes, the outer walls of his inner world had already been broken through one after another. If it wasn't for the eternal moon starlight, which had a certain self-healing effect, the outer walls of his inner world would already be riddled with holes. Ya! Wang Wan appeared. Her small body contained a tremendous amount of spirit power, and Jing Zhe was completely taken aback. It wasn't that he and Baizha had forgotten this, they had already seen how terrifying this little girl was. It was just that she was too young, and they had thought that even if Wang Wan took action, they would be able to handle her. But now, Baizha and Jing Zhe realized that they had still underestimated this little girl's ability to grow. This terrifying little girl's aura was too ferocious. She wasn't even half a year old, but she was like a prehistoric beast. Every day, her body underwent earth-shattering changes. What would happen if she grew up? Thus, in that instant, Baizha had the feeling that even if Wang Ling was now trapped in the eternal world, the fear of being at the mercy of the old Wang family came back to haunt him. But he refused to admit it, and thought that the person he was facing was just a baby who was nothing to be afraid of. He immediately ordered Jing Zhe, catch Wang Muyu and kill her. Seeing a tiny baby body standing in front of another tiny body, he roared furiously. Without any hesitation, he gave Jing Zhe a death order. Wang Wan was too strong, the most logical course of action was to kill her before she fully matured. As he spoke, Jing Zhe attacked again. The arrow in his hand turned into an astonishing electric dragon with a radius as large as a small mountain as it swiftly flew toward Wang Wan. However, all their attention was focused on Wang Wan, and they ignored the little green grass that had arrived at the same time as her. Leng Ming had become stronger and his body had become sturdier as he continued to cultivate in the Sword King world. He leaped through the air like a fairy, fearless in the face of Jing Zhe. A little grass could cut down the sun, the moon, and the stars, and Leng Ming could do it now. What was even more surprising to Jing Zhe was that this powerful little grass. Leng Ming was naturally unafraid of lightning. He charged directly at the lightning dragon. The emerald green sword light burst forth from below, like an Arctic meteor transforming into a huge grass dragon, colliding with the lightning dragon. Then, the lightning dragon and the arrow were completely swallowed up. Lang Ming's strength had once again exceeded the scope of Jing Zai's understanding. He had seen this blade of grass before, but it was far from being as difficult to deal with as it was now. Coupled with Lang Ming's natural restraining ability, Jing Zai was at a loss for a moment. He knew that the 5 elements restrained each other, so he tried to use thunder and lightning to detonate the divine fire to burn Lang Ming. Unexpectedly, Lang Ming was not even afraid of fire. Instead, Lang Ming, who was covered in flames, erupted with an even stronger combat power. Using strange arcs in the void, he continuously displayed his exquisite movement technique. Finally, the heavenly fire descended. From the horizon, it turned into a rain of fire and rained down. Seeing the divine fire descend, Jing Zai finally panicked. He originally thought that according to the 5 elements restrained each other, Lang Ming would be extremely afraid of fire. However, he did not expect that this blade of grass would actually overcome this weakness and turn the divine fire burning on his body into his own. He gritted his teeth and was forced to change the bow and arrow in his hand back into the form of the black umbrella to block the divine fire shower in front of him. There was a time limit for the black umbrella's transformation, and there was a period of time between each transformation. This also meant that Jing Zai would not be able to use that troublesome bow and arrow for a period of time. Having achieved his goal, Lang Ming landed on the ground and took root. He calmly watched as the divine fire burned his body to ashes. Was he committing suicide? No. In the distance, Jing Zai narrowed his eyes. He realized that the land where Lang Ming was had been burned bare. However, at this moment, a gust of wind blew past, and the emerald green grass on the ground emerged once again. This was the spring wind brings life again spell, a consummate skill that Lang Ming had comprehended from the Sword King world. As long as there was land, he didn't fear any fire. Fire indeed restrained him, including the piercing pain when the divine fire had burned him just now. However, he had now cultivated to a level where he could face it calmly. At that moment, Jing Zai felt a little overwhelmed. He couldn't even break through a sword spirit, let alone deal with the baby behind him. With Lang Ming's help, Wang Muan had already taken care of Wang Muyu's injuries. It was only then that Wang Muyu realized to his shock that his Auntie Nguyen's diapers weren't ordinary diapers. They were simply a mobile magic treasure trove that could be used in anything. She took out all kinds of bottles and jars of medicine, and without saying a word, she directly opened the caps and poured them into Wang Muyu's mouth. These bottles and jars were all elixirs that he had refined in his spare time. Almost all of them were crispy noodle snacks, and when Wang Muyu ate them, he felt a sense of familiarity. As a descendant of the 10,000 dragons, Wang Muyu's greatest advantage was that he had a strong physique, and wouldn't die no matter how many supplements he took. Given this situation, Wang Muan didn't care about the effects at all, and directly sat on Wang Muyu's body and fed him bottle after bottle. This could definitely be called the most powerful feeding in history. After all, Wang Ling had refined these elixirs, and their effects alone were several times stronger than those of ordinary elixirs. Thus, when the effects of these supplements collided in Wang Muyu's body, he felt as if a grand fireworks party was going on inside him, and countless fireworks started to collide inside him. Not only had Jing Zai's arrow wound healed at a speed visible to the naked eye, Wang Muyu had even vaguely sensed that he was about to break through. After pouring out the last bottle of pills, Wang Muan thought that she had completed the first step of her work. She turned and flew down from Wang Muyu's body. She stood upright and floated in the void, staring at the cleansing lake in the void. This was the gaze of the master of Shadow Dao, and it made Jing Zai's hair stand on end. At that moment, Wang Muan had already decided to do it herself. With a wave of her hand, she summoned Lang Ming to her side, then climbed onto Lang Ming's sturdy shoulder and directly commanded her sword spirit as a mount. Lang Ming's little face was full of care and love. He completely obeyed Wang Muan's instructions and gave her complete command. This was also a disguised form of becoming one with the sword, which gave Jing Zai an ominous feeling. Boom! In the next moment, Wang Muan made her move. Riding on Lang Ming's shoulder, the two figures arrived almost instantaneously, so fast that Jing Zai couldn't react. A small palm slapped forward and landed precisely on the right side of Jing Zai's face, instantly cracking his teeth. Chapter 1898. It was hard to imagine that a palm the size of a baby's, which looked as soft as cotton, could actually slap someone mercilessly. This small slap pushed Jing Zai back 100 li in the inner world, and he slid on the ground face first, directly plowing out an abyss. It was just a simple slap, but Jing Zai was already dizzy from the slap, and a trace of fear finally appeared on his expressionless face. It was a fear that came from the depths of his soul. Because this slap was all too familiar to him, it was like a memory that had been engraved in his bones since the last time he had been slapped, and he couldn't forget it. When he got up from the bottom of the abyss, Jing Zai had already tried very hard to convince himself that the other party was just a little baby who didn't need to fear him at all, but his body still couldn't stop trembling. Thus, Jing Zai abruptly erupted. He circulated all his spirit energy and spread his dragon wings wide open, and the sparkling and translucent dragon bones shone with a rich luster under the swirling lightning. Wang Wan was well aware that this was fear. Although she wasn't very old, she was still sensitive to emotions. Everyone faced fear in different ways. Jing Zai's apparent outburst was in fact a cover-up. Roaring, he charged to the front and scattered lightning to every corner of the inner world. As he roared, thunder god whips broke out of the ground one after another. Tens of thousands of thunder god whips broke out of the ground, and like tentacles, they swayed back and forth in the inner world. The power of the old world? Leng Ming frowned. His Shifus had warned him before that he had to be on guard against the revival of the old world. This was also the focus of Jinka and Bai Qiao's training for Leng Ming. As the future successor of Sword King World, Leng Ming had studied very seriously at the time, and had a certain level of understanding of the old world. It was a mysterious and terrifying history that symbolized darkness and devouring. No one hoped that the power of the old world would resurface in an era of peace. It wasn't just the modern cultivation world, even Sword King World and other worlds had to be on guard against the emergence of this power. And the biggest symbol of the old world was those mysterious tentacles. Wang Wan had eaten a few of them before, and they hadn't tasted good. Fortunately, they had done their homework in advance, and neither Leng Ming nor Wang Wan was afraid at all. They had thought that Jing Zai would come up with something more interesting after his outburst, but in the end, it was only at this level, which disappointed Wang Wan. As the younger sister, she wanted to surpass her brother, but her brother was really too strong. Who knew how long it would take for him to surpass Wang Ling based on his talent alone? The point was that while she was growing, her brother would also grow. If both of them grew, how long would it take for them to catch up? Therefore, Wang Wan's goal was very clear. Although she had only been born a few months ago, her small body already had great ambitions. She had thought it through very thoroughly. The only way to surpass her brother was to constantly fight and temper herself in battle. Who would have thought that at the critical moment, Wang Ling would have to resort to such a lousy method? It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was a small fry. If one looked down on Wang Wan just by looking at her, and felt that as long as they could defeat her with a strange spell that surpassed her age, they would be underestimating the youngest of the Wang family. As the master of Shadow Dao, wherever there was light, there would be shadows, and using shadows to counter attacks was what Wang Wan was best at. The lightning that Jing Zai had released actually created an excellent environment for Wang Wan. Unhurriedly, she sat on Leng Ming's neck and began to circulate all the spirit energy in her body. Boom! On the surface of the core world, countless pitch-black tentacles reached out from underground. These were all shadows that Wang Wan had replicated. Their might was equivalent to these lightning whips, and the moment they appeared, they formed an equal suppression against the tentacles that Jing Zai had summoned. Then, taking advantage of this counterbalance, Wang Wan extended her tentacles again. Ha! But this time, it was Wang Wan's little foot that touched Jing Zai's face. The instant this little flying leg kicked toward Jing Zai, the huge force it formed exploded on Jing Zai's face, distorting the void and completely tearing it apart. The seemingly ordinary flying leg was actually too powerful. In that instant, Jing Zai felt as if his face had been swept by a huge mountain, and he was immediately sent flying. He spat out a large mouthful of blood, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. So powerful, even Lang Ming was dumbfounded. Although he knew that Wang Wan was very powerful, he didn't expect her to be so ferocious and domineering. For a moment, as Wang Wan's sword spirit, Lang Ming felt a lot of pressure. Before he knew it, he had already been swept away. In order to become a sword spirit that was worthy of Wang Wan, Lang Ming felt that he had to work harder. Cough. Jing Zhe crawled up from the ground for the second time. This was already the second time that he had been attacked in the face. His body was covered in blood, and he looked to be in a very bad condition. The dragon wings on his back had already been fractured, and even a few dragon scales had been shaved off by Wang Wan. He kept coughing up blood, but his expression still showed no signs of admitting defeat. On the other side, Wang Wan had no intention of letting Jing Zhe go. After all, Wang Muyu was injured. Although she had fed him a lot of tonics, Wang Wan felt that it was not enough to vent her anger just by hitting him twice. Therefore, after hitting Jing Zhe twice, she was actually waiting for Jing Zhe's injuries to recover. After all, Jing Zhe's injuries could be quickly healed with the eternal moon starlight that Baizha had given him. To Wang Wan, this was excellent news. Because Jing Zhe's rapid recovery meant two things. One was that he could let her fight to her heart's content. On the other hand, it was a very special way to gain combat experience. Although Jing Zhe wasn't very strong, he had a lot of health. Although his strength was too weak, as long as his body was sturdy enough, he could barely make it as an opponent. Therefore, Wang Wan calculated that Jing Zhe had more or less recovered, and attacked again. The boundless spiritual energy in her body exploded at this moment, turning into endless lightning. This was a technique that she had learned from Jing Zhe using her Shadow Dao ability. This was truly giving him a taste of his own medicine. Lightning is useless against me. Jing Zhe laughed. He was mocking Wang Wan for actually trying to use lightning against him. However, very quickly, he was slapped in the face by Wang Wan again. This was because in the next second, the head hammer that contained the power of lightning smashed onto his body again. Moreover, it was aimed at his vitals. He was hit accurately on the spot. In that instant, Jing Zhe felt as if his body had been struck by lightning. He instantly let out a painful scream. Chapter 1899. This precise blow made Jingza feel as if his lower limbs were cracking, as if the sky was falling down. He had never thought that he would be beaten so badly by a baby. Boom! Endless black Great Dao runes of the Master of Shadow Dao appeared on Wang Wan's body. As the creator of this Dao, her small body exuded boundless godly might, like a god of war. Without using any other spells at all, the pure physical strength of the Master of Shadow Dao's Great Dao overlaid on top of Jingza's body was enough to overwhelm this dragon descendant. Bang! Bang! There were two loud bangs as Wang Wan kicked him away. The instant he was sent flying, she moved again. Carrying her, Lang Ming's speed was unbelievably fast. When Jing Zhe moved to the next coordinate, Lang Ming and the little girl accurately predicted Jing Zhe's landing point and arrived ahead of time. Then, they kicked Jing Zhe's spine hard. Baizha couldn't believe his eyes. Wang Wan's growth rate was too terrifying. In some sense, she might be even more amazing than when he had been born. How could a little girl be so strong? He didn't dare believe it. Crack. Wang Wan's kick could be said to be merciless. She directly broke Jing Zhe's spine. Everyone present could clearly hear the sound of Jing Zhe's spine breaking. His entire body was sent flying, and he was covered in blood. "Ya!" Wang Wan said. Lang Ming, who had his own simultaneous interpreter, translated on the side. "My sword master said that you're too weak, and a dragon descendant at that." Furthermore, it was a dragon descendant. This was too embarrassing. Also, you'll find that the eternal moon starlight on you doesn't work, because my sword master used his Shadow Dao ability to cover it up. Cough. Jingza coughed up blood on the ground. He had already put on a mask of pain, and his face was twisted. He really couldn't understand how the word, ya, could translate so many things. Ya. At that moment, Wang Wan gave another order. Leng Ming understood, and without another word, he stepped on Jingza's broken spine. Behave, my sword master wants to borrow something from you. After saying that, he directly reached his hand in. The moment his fingertips fell, they turned into soft grass, and then directly cut open Jingza's back along his spine. Leng Ming skillfully took out a jade bottle and gathered as much of Jingza's dragon's pine blood into it. This time, Wang Wan did not bring her original mount, SCB-096. When the little girl thought that her lovely rabbit was still waiting at home, she suddenly had an idea. Jingza was a little weak, but the dragon's pine blood was a good supplement. It was perfect as a midnight snack. Furthermore, SCB-096 still had a lot of room for growth. It still needed time to develop, and dragon's pine blood was the perfect supplement. The corners of Jingza's mouth twitched. He lay on the ground with a pained expression, unable to move, allowing Wang Wan and Leng Ming to do whatever they wanted to him. As the descendant of a dragon, he had suffered such humiliation twice for no reason. He had been taught a lesson by Wang Ling last time. And this time, he was taught a lesson by Wang Wan. This pair of siblings from the Wang clan was too frightening. Jingza realized that he couldn't afford to offend them. Girl, you're having fun beating me up, but have you ever thought that your house would be on fire? At that moment, Jingza sneered. He knew that he couldn't die. Even if he failed in this mission and failed to bring Wang Miyu back, luring Wang Ling away and taking Wang Miyu away was only the second step in the whole plan. If they went further in, they had in fact arranged for another group of people to be sent directly to the Wang family's small villa. The purpose was none other than to assassinate the Wang family. Whether it was Father Wang or Mother Wang, they had already been included in Baijia's purge list. The grave god had failed in his attack on the Wang family last time, but Baizha felt that he had a good chance of succeeding this time without Wang Ling around. Most importantly, this strongest little girl was also in the core world now. With Jingza and him keeping an eye on her from behind, Baizha felt that there was a good chance that little girl Nguan would succeed this time. Elsewhere, in the Wang family's small villa, there was actually an anxious atmosphere. Their daughter and son weren't around, and although Father and Mother Wang didn't show it on the surface, they were in fact very worried. It wasn't that they were worried about Wang Nguan's strength, but that they were worried about everything else. After all, little girl Nguan had only been born a few months ago, and she had actually been sent to maintain peace on Earth. Even Father Wang felt that he couldn't write such a melodramatic plot. Thus, the current situation was that old Wang and his wife were waiting at home. Without anyone at home, they couldn't even eat to their heart's content. Father Wang had no appetite for food, and could only sit in front of the computer and smoke. His fingers clutched the keyboard as he pondered for a long time, but couldn't write a single word. Looks like I can only use the manuscript library. Father Wang cupped his chin as he pondered. He was so agitated that he couldn't calm down even after smoking several cigarettes in a row. Looking at the SQQ profile picture that kept jumping around, Father Wang finally steeled his heart and clicked on it, then directly sent the document to the using an offline file. Don't rush me. I've delivered the goods. I don't even have my underwear. Father Wang typed. On the other side of the computer screen, Lai Meng was a little confused. What? Did you give me the entire manuscript repository? Father Wang was extremely agitated. That's right. Are you satisfied now? Lai Meng was blank. He could see that Father Wang seemed to be in a bad mood, so he said weakly, sorry. I don't think I've received it yet, Father Wang replied straight away, word is very big, bear with it. Lai Meng, dumbfounded, he waited for the offline file to be transferred over as he wondered what on earth had happened to Father Wang. At the same time, he was also thinking about the situation of online literature writers nowadays, and wondering if he had been pressuring them to update too much. After all, at the very beginning, online literature writers had been updating weekly, then came the era of 2000 daily updates, which slowly developed into 4000, 6000, 8000, and now the most outrageous era of 20,000 and more. Indeed, it's too much. Lai Mengmeng sighed. He felt that he should be concerned about the health of his writers, and planned to find time to go to the Wang family's small villa to see how Father Wang was doing. At the same time, Father Wang was already fully armed. He was extremely worried about Wang Wan's safety, so he and Mother Wang put on the latest enchanted long johns that Wang Ling had left behind. They called over some of the family's powerful enchanted gremlins and had them turn into human forms. The whole group was ready to set off from the villa with a bang. At that moment, a cute and mischievous little girl appeared at the entrance of the Wang family's small villa. She had a popsicle in her mouth and looked as cute as a doll. "Protect my lord." Lord Ma immediately realized that something wasn't right and shielded Father and Mother Wang behind him. He could sense that the girl in front of him was also a descendant of the dragon race. And her rank wasn't low. Chapter 1900. Thinking about it carefully, Father Wang suddenly realized that this seemed to be the second time someone had directly come looking for trouble with him and Mother Wang. AI, who had they offended? Didn't they just give birth to 2 nuclear bombs? Did they have to be targeted like this? Father Wang sighed endlessly in his heart. He vaguely recalled the last time Wang Wan had been born, when the 1% of the grave gods had come looking for trouble with him. At the time, Immortal Toya had been present to help deliver Wang Wan. In the end, because Wang Ling had enlightened him with his Qilin arm, the 1% of the grave gods had been directly suppressed. Little Kato? Anne? Little Eagle? Are you there? Father Wang called out in his heart. Because his left and right hands had been enlightened before, Father Wang had been a little out of his mind for a while, and Mother Wang had straightaway taught him a lesson, which had also resulted in his left and right hands being sealed. Now that they were in danger again, Father Wang didn't know if his call could wake them up again. After calling out twice and realizing that there was no response in his mind, he couldn't help feeling a little disappointed and nervous. There were many gremlins enlightened by Wang Ling in the Wang family's small villa, and with Lord Ma at the helm, there shouldn't be any problems with their safety. But now, without the help of his left and right hands, Father Wang still felt that the current situation was very unpredictable. At the same time, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was also paying attention to the old Wang family's plight. Crispy Noodles was keeping an eye on Wang Ling's situation, and Wang Wan and Leng Ming were there for Wang Muyu's situation. In this situation, the old Wang family might also be targeted. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that given the strength of these 2 old seniors of the Wang family, no evil demon would be able to leap over the old Wang family's lightning pool. But as the head of a sect, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal still wanted to take a look. On one hand, he wanted to see if there was anything he could do to help, and on the other hand, he felt that this was a very rare opportunity to learn from them at close range. He had already carried out many missions with Wang Ling before, and each time, he could feel that he was a little closer to achieving great Dao. This time, the opportunity to watch the battle at close range had been provided by the 2 experienced seniors of the old Wang family, so the learning effect was naturally extraordinary. Furthermore, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was very considerate in setting up a temporary lockdown in the name of Battle Sect to ensure that Father Wang and Mother Wang's fight wouldn't be watched by ordinary cultivators. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was well aware that the old Wang family had always kept a low profile. Sect Master, the surroundings have been sealed. Our battle sect has sent a total of 300 gold core cultivators under the command of 20 nascent soul outer sect elders and 5 deity transformation stage peak elders to completely seal off the wasteland. They're using the name of the sect's maneuver, but they've only applied for 10 hours. After 10 hours, we'll have to leave, Klein said from the side. As the chief commander of the United Front Department, he could be considered one of the few foreign talents in battle sect working in Huaxiu Nation. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that he was a very capable and trustworthy person. It won't take that long. That's enough. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded in satisfaction, then said, "Withdraw first, Kun. Leave the rest to me." That girl isn't simple. Sect Master, be careful. Kun nodded, then swiftly retreated on his spirit sword. According to their previous plan, after sealing off the area, they would directly retreat 150 li away and set up a barrier 300 li away. But as the leader of the dragon bloodline, it was naturally impossible for Yen Fu, who was naturally the leader of the dragon bloodline, to not sense this. She licked her popsicle with a smile on her face. Are these small fries around you also your people? Father Wang knew that Yen Fu was probably talking about people from Battle's sect. Although Father Wang was very weak, grenade throwing had been a guest at old Wang's house time and time again, so Father Wang could still sense his aura. But because their opponent was a dragon bloodline, Father Wang didn't place all his hopes on grenade throwing Senior Immortal. However, he could still guess grenade throwing Senior Immortal's purpose for this trip. One was to protect him, and the other was to learn. Apart from these two reasons, he couldn't think of any other reason. But the problem was that he really didn't have anything to learn. Father Wang's heart was on the verge of collapse. He didn't know when grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and some other people in the cultivation world had started to regard him as a big shot. He was clearly just a very ordinary body refinement cultivator. You little doll, your tone is very arrogant. With me here, you won't be able to touch a hair on my old master's head. At this critical moment, Lord Ma took the initiative to step forward. He still had that old-fashioned look on his face, and the curled mustache at the corner of his lips gave people a feeling of power without being angry. His pure white Taoist robe made him look especially sage-like in such a tense situation. Of course, the most impressive thing about him was the wood-grain waistcoat on his neck. It was a gift from the cosmic god tree himself after he had fallen in love with it, and it gave off the scent of wood. Without saying anything else, Yen Fu made her move the moment she finished eating the popsicle in her hand. The shadow of a fire dragon surged behind her. Lord Ma and the goblins who had been enlightened by the Wang family were waiting solemnly. Lord Ma and Bed Immortal, the two most senior goblins of the Wang family, each carried Father Wang and Mother Wang on their shoulders. The ground in front of the Wang family's villa instantly exploded as their feet left the ground. It shattered with a rumble and turned into a roiling lake of fire from which lava surged and gave off astonishing energy. The surrounding ground had all collapsed, leaving only the Wang family's small villa alone in this area, like an isolated island. Wang Ling had enlightened the entire villa, so Father and Mother Wang weren't worried about any property damage at all. They were just a little astonished by Yen Fu's ability. She looked like a very young girl, but her attacks were so decisive and ruthless that she directly disintegrated the ground under her feet. What an astonishing aura. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned. Actually, he had a third reason for coming here this time, which was to collect accurate data on the dragon descendants at close range. Although Earth had already been upgraded and the realms above True Immortal had been liberated, the speed at which the dragon descendants were regenerating was too fast. If they didn't have a good countermeasure, apart from those hidden immemorial beings, few cultivators on Earth would be able to compete with these dragon descendants who had the advantage of bloodlines. It was obvious that Lord Ma had never expected Yen Fu to be so troublesome. He wanted to get serious, but it was a little inconvenient with Father Wang sitting on his shoulder. Old master, it doesn't seem convenient for me to fight with you on my back. Do you want to enter my body? No. Father Wang refused straight away and confidently. AI. Lord Ma sighed, a little disappointed on his face. He had clearly already cleaned up his internal environment. Because of the cosmic god tree, the reserves in his body had long since been emptied out as fertilizer. Right now, his body was very clean. But his old master was too willful. He couldn't get over this psychological obstacle, which gave him a headache. Chapter 1901. Lord Ma knew better than anyone that his body was now very clean. Since falling in love with the cosmic god tree, he had gained a girlfriend who liked to clean, and he looked a lot younger. He was already the oldest gremlin in old Wang's family, and Little Sheep had always called him uncle with white hair and a ruddy complexion, which touched Lord Ma very much. At that moment, as one of the few furniture gremlins in Old Wang's family who had been strengthened by version 3.0's enchantment spell, Lord Ma abruptly changed into a very coquettish Western-style tuxedo the next second to highlight his status as an elder in the world of enchanted gremlins. "Bet Immortal, I'll leave old master to you. I'll go beat this girl back." As Lord Ma said this, he directly teleported Father Wang to Bet Immortal, who was carrying Father Wang and Mother Wang on each shoulder and was very steady. He and Lord Ma were old partners. In this situation, there was no need for them to say much, just a look was enough for them to work together tacitly. What a joke. Do you think a gremlin you created with magic can contend with us, the descendants of dragons? Yen Roa giggled. She found it inconceivable that an enchanted piece of furniture could actually speak so confidently and want to fend off a descendant of dragons with noble blood. Arrogant girl, so what if you're a descendant of dragons? My master has never cared about trash like you. Putting his hands behind his back, Lord Ma looked disdainfully at her, the tail of his Western-style tuxedo fluttering in the windless air. Yen Roa couldn't take it anymore to be looked down upon by an enchanted toilet. In any case, she was a descendant of dragons and didn't approve of this kind of matchup. To actually let a toilet be her opponent, this was looking down on the dragon clan too much. You're courting death. Yen Roa instantly flew into a rage and spat out dragon flames. This was the divine fire of the dragon clan, which alternated between purple and black, and had a frightening temperature. The moment it was spat out, the flaming lake below immediately resonated, and several fire dragons soared into the sky from the lake to form a pincer attack on Lord Ma. Lord Ma's face was as calm as an ancient well, but he was secretly astonished at Yen Roa's methods. She clearly looked like a very gentle and quiet girl, but her moves were all large-scale destructive attacks. Although he was the most experienced gremlin in the Wang family, Lord Ma still knew nothing about the grand occasion of the Dragon Clan. This battle was also a lesson for Lord Ma himself. However, Lord Ma didn't panic in the slightest. He quickly dodged. Although the formation of the fire dragon was sudden, it still gave Lord Ma some time to react. The rest of the Wang family's spiritual monsters hid in the house and watched. With the entire villa surrounded by the flaming lake, the temperature in the house rose by a lot. The spiritual monsters looked at the doomsday-like scene outside through the window, and all of them felt a lingering fear. The dragon race was truly too frightening. There were not many enlightened monsters in the Wang family who could fight against a dragon descendant of this level. If it were them, they would probably be burned to ashes immediately after coming into contact with the dragon race's divine fire. Just like Jing Zhe, Yen Roa had also grown over the past few days, becoming more ferocious than before. As Lord Ma fought, he also felt that it was a pity. If such a powerful ability could be used to benefit the human cultivation world, it would be a wonderful way of symbiosis. He didn't understand why the dragon race had to pursue the mission of restoring the glory of the past. Since they could come back to life from their hearts, it was not impossible to walk a path of peaceful coexistence and symbiosis. With a bang, Lord Ma dodged sideways to avoid a mountain-sized fire. Yen Roa's spiritual power seemed to be endless, and she didn't care about the problem of consumption when casting spells. She sprinkled her dragon breath and spiritual power in large amounts, burning the ground in front of her into a fiery red. The nearby ground was all cracked and shattered on the spot, forming a dry abyss. Do you only know how to hide? Toilet bowl. Yen Roa taunted. She didn't regard Lord Ma as her opponent at all, and was just releasing her temper willfully. When Lord Ma heard this, his face suddenly became serious. He felt that this little dragon girl really needed to be disciplined. As the head of the goblins enlightened by the Wang family, he had always considered himself to be elegant and easygoing. When he had dodged these attacks earlier, he had planned to use verbal admonition to make Yen Roa surrender. But as it turned out, Lord Ma felt that he had been thinking too much. Sure enough, verbal evasion didn't work for everyone. As the head of the family, he now had to teach Yen Roa a lesson. Whoosh! At that moment, Yen Roa spat out the dragon god fire again, and her pink skirt glowed under the resonance power of her dragonkin bloodline. She intensified the power of the dragon god fire again, and this time, it directly hit Lord Ma head-on and completely engulfed him. This time, Lord Ma didn't choose to dodge, but directly opened his mouth to take Yen Ruo's dragon god fire, and with a terrifying devouring power, he formed a wonderful cave inside his body to continuously suck in the dragon god fire. Everyone was shocked. He had taken on the dragon god fire head-on. Furthermore, he was even devouring the dragon god fire. This was simply heaven-defying. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was horrified when he saw this from a distance. He knew of Lord Ma's background, but he had never thought that he would actually be so strong. No wonder old Senior Wang hadn't made a move. It turned out that he had already anticipated Lord Ma's strength. Could Lord Ma alone resist it? As expected of old Senior Wang, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sighed in his heart at Father Wang and Mother Wang's formidable strength. It seemed that the dragonkin wasn't strong enough for them to make a move. Although it was very strong, the goblins enlightened by the old Wang family were already enough to deal with it. I don't believe you can keep swallowing. Like Jingza, Yen Ruo had a kind of magical arrogance. She looked down on Lord Ma to begin with, and it was even harder for her to accept the fact that her dragon god fire was ineffective. In the next moment, she increased the intensity of the flames and tried to use the dragon god fire to blow up Lord Ma's internal space. But what Yen Ruo herself hadn't expected was that when she activated the dragon god fire, Lord Ma's body instead underwent a new change. Lord Ma's black swallow-tailed coat was visibly changing as the divine fire of the dragon clan continued to devour it. Not only that, but even the color of his eyes and hair had changed. His black tuxedo turned a gradual black-gold color, and his hair and curly goatee turned pure gold. Furthermore, Lord Ma's aura was even stronger than before. As he continued to absorb the dragon god fire, he became stronger than before. Uncle Ma's aura seems to have increased. I know. This is fourth gear. Fourth gear? The enlightened goblins discussed among themselves. Oh, it's version 4.0 of the enlightened spell. It needs a special mechanism to trigger the upgrade. Little Sheep said softly, now, Uncle Ma is already a version 4.0 enlightened goblin. At the same time, Father and Mother Wang heard Sheep's voice. Realization dawned on them, and they were speechless. Who could have thought Lord Ma had actually evolved into a quenched toilet bowl while fighting the dragonkin? Chapter 1902. Wang Ling had planned to enter version 4.0 in advance, and it was clear that he had already foreseen this battle for Lord Ma, so he hadn't used his King's Eye fire to temper Lord Ma's body. Hateful. Who would have thought that he would actually be used instead, and use the Dragon Clan fire to successfully temper Lord Ma's body? At that moment, Lord Ma's aura was even stronger after entering version 4.0. His whole body gave off an astonishing aura, and at the same time, 10 vortexes surged up behind him. These were grotto heaven spaces that could devour everything and had formidable destructive power. Everything that got close to the grotto heaven vortexes would collapse as if they were sucked into a black hole. Hateful. Feeling the immense pressure, she spread her dragon wings, and as they flapped, they formed dozens of fire tornadoes that rolled forward. Boom! But Lord Ma just raised his hand, and the 10 grotto heaven vortexes behind him moved in unison. Like magic balls, they spiraled forward with a kind of agile power. Before the fire tornadoes could get close to Lord Ma's body, the grotto heaven vortexes had already completely disintegrated and swallowed them up without leaving a trace. So strong. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was shocked. He admired Father Wang more and more, and thought that everything had been within his calculations. He had actually thought of using the Dragon Clan fire to temper Lord Ma's body, increasing his overall strength by several times over. Hateful. Hateful's attack had been completely ineffective. These 10 grotto heaven vortexes were like an airtight barrier that firmly protected Lord Ma. With a wave of his hand, the flaming lake under his feet also began to be absorbed by the 10 grotto heaven vortexes, creating a magnificent scene like a dragon sucking in water. In just one short moment, Lord Ma had already sucked the flaming lake dry. However, the scorched ground had already been reduced to scorched earth, and not a single blade of grass grew within a radius of 100 li. Lord Ma had thought of teaching Hateful a lesson. He had wanted to teach Hateful a lesson and beat her back. But now, he didn't think so. Since it was Hateful? Since this was a mistake made by Hateful, he had to at the very least capture this girl alive and suppress her here so that she could plant trees and restore the ecology of this area. Buzz! In an instant, his body glowed with golden light, and the 10 grotto heavens moved together to form a cage. Hateful was suppressed. The moment he was surrounded by the 10 grotto heavens, he felt like he was going to explode. Her eyes widened in fear. She took out the dragon descendant weapon, the burning heaven chain hammer, which was a radiant grey dragon descendant weapon, but in the end, it could not stop the grotto heaven from advancing. After taking out the chain hammer, the entire artifact was engulfed by the heavenly passage. She could not believe that she would actually be defeated by a monster. Everything happened too suddenly. The instant the 10 grotto heavens merged, Yen Di, and Yen Di disappeared. His body was engulfed and disappeared into the void. Uncle Ma didn't kill her, did he? Little Sheep asked. No. Lord Ma shook his head. I still want her to help us clean up the courtyard and rectify the ecology nearby. Everything was burned by her. She should pay for it. As he said that, Lord Ma opened his palm, and a fiery red dragon scale lay quietly in his palm. Was he disguising himself with the dragon scale? It was plucked during the duel. Then, he snapped his fingers and sent the dragon scale to the distant shore. The person who received the dragon scale was none other than Peng Shiren. At the moment, Peng Shiren's real body was playing chess with the grave god. Facing the dragon scale that had suddenly appeared on the chessboard mountain, Peng Shiren's expression changed. In the past few days, in order to escape from the imprisonment of the Tao ancestor Wang's Dharma Laksana, he had thought of countless ways. In the end, he had used the cicada shedding carapace technique to escape from Yen Di's side. He had also sought the protection of the grave god and Bai Zhe. Moreover, it was Bai Zhe who had thought of this method to escape from the very beginning. Peng Shiren knew that he was not strong enough to be a match for Yen Di, so he decided to join Bai Zhe's side. He left his body and half of his soul behind. With Bai Zhe's help, he guided the other half of his soul into this brand new body. This was a new body that Bai Zhe had specially created for him. It was a body of a dragon descendant created from the dragon bone gene of the dark devouring dragon, which was now under Peng Shiren's control. Peng Shiren had thought that his cicada shedding carapace technique was flawless. Once he fully adapted to the body of one of the 3 great leaders of the dragon clan, he would be able to find Yen Di again, and even Wang Ling to directly carry out his revenge. But now, faced with Yen Di's dragon scale, which had suddenly teleported in front of him, he was suddenly stupefied. He was suddenly stupefied. Why do you want to give me Yen Di's dragon scale? Peng Shiren furrowed his brows. He had also been the one to propose the plan to lure Wang Ling and the others into the eternal past. He had thought that Wang Ling wouldn't find out about everything he had done in the dark. But now, Lord Ma's long-distance teleportation instantly made Peng Shiren's heartstrings taut. Don't be too nervous. I thought this was just a test. Your appearance and aura have all changed. Now, you are a new generation dragon descendant with the dark devouring dragon gene. Plus, you have the power of the Great Old Ones, which is the perfect combination of Great Old Ones and dragons. As long as we cultivate you, you will be one of the strongest war machines in our camp. The grave god mused. Pinching the dragon scale between 2 fingers, he frowned slightly. Loathing? His defeat was within his expectations. There's no need to worry too much. The Wang family isn't ordinary to begin with. Even I can't deal with them. How can she do it on her own? So, you did it on purpose? Asked Peng Shiren. Jingze and Loathing? There is some kind of bond between them. If Loathing is arrested? On the contrary, Jingze will be more determined to stand on our side. The grave god said. He was already wavering. After this disaster, Mr. Bai and I are sure that he will give up all his fantasies and become one of us. Hearing this, Peng Shiren instantly understood. But there was still one thing he couldn't figure out. What on earth is going on with Wang Muyu? Bringing Wang Muyu back is indeed part of our plan, and nothing has changed. It's just that Mr. Bai didn't expect the newborn Wang Yuan to be so strong. The grave god laughed. He was now in the human form of Sothoth. His body was covered in bubbles, and he looked like a bunch of shiny purple grapes. When he laughed, the bubbles on his body would float up, explode, and reform. Yes, that girl is like a god of war. I feel that we won't be able to snatch her away normally. But her brother is even more terrifying. It wasn't easy for us to trap him in the eons. I know, said the grave god. This is indeed a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but it's unrealistic to force it now. Why don't we plant some seeds for the little dragon man while he's not here? Let him find us himself. Chapter 1903. Yan Luo had been captured, and Jing Zhe had also been severely injured. He spat out dragon blood like a drowning dog on his last breath, and completely lost the dignity of a dragon descendant. Leng Ming melted his back and took a lot of dragon spine blood from his back. This caused Jing Zhe to feel incomparable pain, and he kept screaming in pain. There was no doubt that Jing Zhe had been completely defeated, and it all looked like a foregone conclusion. Wang Muyu. Only you know what your surname is. His mouth was very stubborn, and he completely ignored Leng Ming's torture as he spoke in a weak voice. Those eyes looked at Wang Muyu, and for a brief moment, Wang Muyu felt an indelible impact on his soul. Look at how these human cultivators treat our dragon clan. You shouldn't help the wicked do evil and acknowledge a traitor as your father, you talk too much. Leng Ming raised his hand and punched Jing Zhe in the back. The ground immediately caved in, creating a huge pit. Dust flew up in all directions, and the huge impact directly shook the core world to the point where it seemed like it was going to collapse. The stability of the core world structure was closely related to its owner's condition. If the owner's body and mind collapsed, the core world would also disintegrate. It was hard to imagine that Wang Yuan and Leng Ming, master and servant, had joined forces to directly wreak havoc in someone else's core world, as if they were the masters of the core world. In the next second, the scene of the world falling apart changed. Wang Muyu noticed that they had already evacuated from Jing Zhe's core world. The surroundings returned to normal, and Jing Zhe had also disappeared along with the core world. Did he run away? Leng Ming had actually been on guard against Jing Zhe escaping, so he had been keeping an eye on him. He hadn't expected the other party to escape so smoothly. It was clear that Bai Zhe and the grave god had helped him in this. After their previous failures, both of them were undoubtedly victims, who had been mercilessly whipped. Since they were victims, they had to have done some research on how to escape when they couldn't win. Leng Ming was a little vexed because he couldn't tell what the other party had done. Little girl Nguan, on the other hand, had a calm expression on her face. She lay on Leng Ming's back and stretched out her soft hand to stroke Leng Ming's furry green hair. At the same time, she pinched his cute elf ears to comfort him. In their original plan, they hadn't planned to directly kill Jingze, and Wang Ling had arranged this scenario from the very beginning. As his younger sister, Wang Yuan didn't know what he was planning, but she would definitely fully support her brother's work. After obediently accepting Wang Yuan's consolation, Leng Ming calmed down a lot. Then, he carried Wang Yuan on his back and walked to Wang Muyu. Oh, your body should be fine now, right? I'm fine. Auntie Nguan is too strong. She fed me a lot of pills. To be honest, even now, Wang Muyu felt the blood in his body churning. Not only was his injury about to recover, he even felt that he was stronger than before and was on the verge of a breakthrough. Leng Ming had obviously sensed this as well. He hurriedly asked, "We need to find a good place to break through. Do you want to go to the Mountain of Origins? You need to find a good place to break through. Do you want to go to the Backtrack Mountain?" It's a place similar to a time-secret realm that Sword Master Ling set up. You can cultivate faster there, and it's isolated from the world. Wang Miyu thought for a while, then patted the dust off his body and stood up. Then I'll have to trouble you, Brother Ling Ming. He had no reason to refuse such an invitation, and it was obvious that this was Wang Ling's idea. Wang Miyu felt that as a son, he had no reason not to listen to his old father. At the same time, elsewhere, in front of the Peng family's main residence, East Great Emperor, who had his eyes closed, suddenly opened them. In a foreign land, he watched the ages. This was Wang Ling's method. Even if he was trapped in a different timeline at the moment, he could still clearly understand what he was concerned about. In the Wang family's villa, Wang Miyu's situation had stabilized. It could be said that the current overall arrangement and the overall direction of the script were all within Wang Ling's expectations. And Wang Ling had planned all of this a long time ago. It was just that the interlude of being trapped for eternity had forced Wang Ling to make some slight changes to his original plan. Fortunately, everything that had happened so far had gone according to plan and had gone very smoothly. He just had to wait for Lotus Sun to see the young lady of the Peng family in front of him with peace of mind. Lotus Sun, dressed as a man, had already passed the Dao discussion and the talent show. Her beautiful swordsmanship had mesmerized everyone present for eternity. It was a swordsmanship that had never been seen before in eternity, and it was an eye-opener for everyone. Lotus Sun didn't even need to think of the moves herself. In her state of being one with the sword, Mysterious Sea led Lotus Sun through this gorgeous sword dance performance, as if he was leading her through a spirit sword waltz that no one else could see. Even the steward of the Peng family's main residence, who had always been domineering, was shocked. This kind of figure and this kind of swordsmanship were definitely not something an ordinary tycoon could pull off. Coupled with the fact that she had used a Dao ancestor pill earlier, as well as the fact that he hadn't been able to find out Lotus Sun's background no matter what he did, he became even more curious about her identity. It seems that this Mr. Wang Rongxia is indeed not an ordinary person. It looks like there's going to be a show for today's matchmaking session. He will be the first person to see the young lady. The steward guessed. After all, he was the one who had received the gift, and he was now starting to speak up for Lotus Sunday. It was just that the final outcome was still very hard to predict. After all, it was the young lady of the Peng family who had set up this matchmaking session in the first place. Their young lady had an eccentric temperament, and even if she passed all the checkpoints, it was still possible that she would be eliminated in the end. Congratulations to Mr. Wang Rongxia for passing the second round. The next round is the martial arts competition. In this round, the young lady will personally test Mr. Wang. After the results of the second round were tabulated, the steward announced it on behalf of Lotus Sunday. Everyone at the scene and the onlookers on the street applauded. They were onlookers to join in on the fun, and thought that Lotus Sun's move would provide an excellent template for them to interview for a son-in-law in the future. In the side courtyard of the Peng family's main residence, Wang Ling and the others had the opportunity to observe the scene up close. When the headquarters of the Peng clan finished reporting the plan for the next level, a beautiful woman in a pinkish-white robe slowly walked out of the hall. She looked like an immortal. She was graceful and graceful. Her appearance was vaguely familiar, but it was not exactly the same. He could only sense that feeling from her brows and eyes. At first glance, Wang Ling could confirm that this person was undoubtedly Peng Shiren's younger sister, Peng Basin. Moreover, he felt as if he had seen it somewhere before. It had nothing to do with Peng Shiren, but in the real world, he felt as if he had seen it somewhere before. Chapter 1904. For some reason, Wang Ling felt that he had seen Peng Basin somewhere before. She had a particularly heroic and elegant air about her, and didn't give off the feeling of a gentle, refined, pretty daughter of a humble family like other girls. She looked like a very pleasant person. Her long white robe accentuated her figure perfectly, and she didn't wear any gaudy silk ribbons. She gave off a very different vibe from those female cultivators from ancient times, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was a peerless beauty. The moment Lotus Sun saw Peng Basin, she was a little stunned. She had never expected the legendary eldest miss of the Peng family to be like this. She didn't seem like a girl at all, and just like Wang Ling's intuition, she felt like she had seen this Miss Peng somewhere before. Young Master Wang. At that moment, Peng Basin's words interrupted Lotus Sun's thoughts. It was a very magnetic and very neutral voice. If you closed your eyes, you wouldn't be able to tell whether it was a man or a woman. Lotus Sun quickly came back to her senses. How would Miss Peng like to compete? As she asked this, she mentally prepared herself. Their purpose in coming here wasn't to propose marriage. The main point was to meet Peng Basin's older brother, Peng Shiren, and then carry out the follow-up plan. It was just that after this simple greeting, Lotus Sun suddenly had a bad feeling, and felt that this Peng Basin in front of her wasn't as simple as she seemed. Young Master Wang's swordsmanship is superb. I've also seen your sword dance just now. It's a unique swordsmanship. I've studied thousands of swordsmanship, but this is the first time I've seen young Master Wang's swordsmanship. She smiled, looking very modest. In terms of sword technique, I definitely can't compare to young Master Wang. Young Master Wang is very strong, and I think I'll be at a disadvantage if we compete. However, I mainly focus on cultivating spiritual swords, so before the competition, I have a presumptuous request. Miss Peng, please speak. Lotus Sun bowed politely. It's like this, I definitely can't beat young Master Wang. So I thought I'd pick one of young Master Wang's followers to fight on his behalf. If that person beats me, it'll be considered young Master Wang's victory. Pick one person. Lotus Sun was stunned. Never in her wildest dreams had she expected this result. Turning around, she saw that the people behind her were no longer people, but grenades, missiles, and even nuclear bombs. Yes, no matter how useless the people behind her were, they were still a grenade. Drawing a grenade definitely wouldn't do. Lotus Sun felt that Miss Peng's strength was extraordinary, and the grenade would most likely lose. Thus, the best outcome was to draw a missile. For example, Wang Zhen, who was playing the role of the Holy Stone Cult's Holy Maiden, or Zhang Zipei, who was playing Yiren. Winning when their strength was similar was the most logical. As for the rest, Lotus Sun felt that all of them were undoubtedly nuclear bombs. Behind him were the four emperors of primordial era. No matter which one Peng Basin picked, it would be considered as winning the lottery. If they were to fight, she would have to act. Furthermore, she had to act as if she had won by a hair's breadth, and she couldn't win too obviously. What's wrong? Why is young Master Wang so hesitant? Are you not confident in the people you brought? At that moment, Peng Basin continued to provoke him with words. This is also a test. Generally speaking, the strength of the accompanying servants is a reflection of their background. I will naturally comply with Miss Peng's suggestion. At this point, Lotus Sun had no choice but to play along. She silently looked back at Wang Ling, hoping that he would step back a little and not stand too close to the front. After all, what she was most worried about was that Wang Ling would be chosen. Because even nuclear bombs had different grades, in theory, Wang Ling couldn't even be considered a nuclear bomb. It was basically the legendary dark matter. It was too unstable. If he made a move, he might directly raise the entire planet to the ground. On the other side, Wang Ling immediately understood what Lotus Sun meant. After all, he and Lotus Sun had gone through several missions together, and they still had this bit of tacit understanding in their eyes. But he had only taken half a step back when Peng Basin called out his name. Sir! Don't step back, it's you. Wang Ling. As soon as he said this, Lotus Sun and everyone else instantly broke out in a sweat. Although everyone already knew that the plot of the Eternal World was basically crooked and director Wang Ling had to manually correct it, no one had expected that director Wang, who had been standing behind the scenes, would actually take the field himself. Are you sure, Miss Peng? Lotus Sun confirmed. She hoped that Peng Basin would suddenly change her mind and choose someone else, but in the end, this Miss Peng shook her head with a smile on her face and said, I usually like to play chess, and it's said that there are no regrets when you play. Of course there are no regrets when you choose someone. It's this brother. I saw him step back, and it looks like he doesn't have much confidence in himself, so I chose him. At this point, Lotus Sun had completely figured it out. Peng Basin actually had no intention of marrying him, which was why she had chosen him. But since she had no intention of marrying him, why did she make such a big fuss about inviting all sorts of son-in-law to come knocking on her door? Was she waiting for the one she loved to appear? She didn't understand. But since Peng Basin had chosen Wang Ling of her own accord, Lotus Sun could only silently wish Peng Basin good luck in her heart. In any case, it was just a competition. It was fine as long as Wang Ling didn't marry this woman. This was what she thought in her heart, and she very cooperatively stepped aside. On the other side, Wang Ling also quietly and obediently stepped forward. Since the arrow was already knocked on the bowstring, he had no choice but to release it. Wang Ling wasn't flustered at all. After all, he was only possessing this body, and East Great Emperor was still in charge of the control of his body. East Great Emperor himself could freely control his strength, and there was no situation where he couldn't suppress his battle strength. But as an emperor, even East Great Emperor himself wasn't very confident. He stayed in the imperial palace all year round to deal with all kinds of important matters, and the people around him were all first-class experts. Although this Miss Peng looked very extraordinary, in the end, she was just a young miss of an aristocratic family. He didn't know anything about her specific strength, and didn't know where to start. Senior Wang, if the situation doesn't look good, you have to pull me back. Seeing that Wang Ling had returned control of the body to him, East Great Emperor immediately understood that this meant that he was going to make a move. Before he officially made his move, he said this in his heart. However, he received Wang Ying's ruthless reply. I'm very sorry, I only give people buffs, not attenuate them. East Great Emperor, buff, what do you mean? Wang Ying sighed. It's a buff spell. East Great Emperor, very well, then senior shouldn't act rashly. I'll see how it goes. Helpless, East Great Emperor sighed, and then directly took out a spirit sword from his emperor's treasure chest. This was already the worst of all the spirit swords he could take out. However, when the Great East Emperor took it out, everyone at the scene revealed a shocked expression. Royal King Sword? Isn't this the legendary spirit sword? Chapter 1905. It's actually the Royal King Sword? Peng Shiren sat on a wide bench in a dark underground room deep within the Peng family's headquarters, sipping tea as he looked at the scene projected by the magic ball. He was able to see the entire scene of Peng Basin marrying Peng Basin. Logically speaking, as her elder brother, he should have helped his younger sister choose her husband. However, Peng Shiren felt that there was no need for that at the moment. His younger sister was merely a tool that could be used at a crucial moment to verify the path of cultivation he had chosen. Furthermore, she was a consumable that could be discarded at any time after being used. This had always been Peng Shiren's opinion since he was young. Furthermore, he despised those who protected his younger sister like she was the apple of their eyes. At this moment, he stared at the image projected by the magic ball in front of him, and his boredom finally piqued his interest. Is there still no result? A black-robed attendant stood at the side. His voice had aged, and his strength was extraordinary. He was no weaker than the Emperor's guards. Master, we've already done our best to investigate, but we still haven't found Wang Rongxia's true identity. Then I understand. Peng Shiren nodded. He seemed to have understood something. How interesting. They came to propose marriage, and even got a fake identity. It seems that their goal isn't simple. They're probably not just here to marry Basin. Master suspects that their identities are fake? The black-robed guard was clearly surprised by this deduction. There doesn't seem to be any other reasonable explanation, Peng Shiren smiled. Our Peng family's influence is spread across the 4 regions. We have spies in all the regions governed by the 4 emperors. If Wang Rongxia was a famous member of the royal family, there's no way our Peng family wouldn't have noticed her. Of course, this is only my personal guess. It's only after she took out the Royal King's sword that I confirmed my suspicions. The black-robed guard bowed and asked, if this servant may be so bold as to ask, what's wrong with the Royal King's sword? The Royal King's sword is a legendary sword with a very special origin. In theory, only the 4 emperors possess it. But now, it's actually in the hands of a servant. Don't you find it strange? Look at this servant. Although his clothing is standard, it should have been specially packaged. He doesn't look anything like a servant. Peng Shiren analyzed the situation as he sipped on his tea. I've heard that the 4 martial monarchs are wary of the Peng clan's development. He sent people to test the waters several times. The 4 emperors gathering this time is actually a very good opportunity for them to communicate. At the same time, this is something that my Peng family is especially concerned about. However, if they have a secret meeting before the 4 emperors gathering, we won't know. Secret meeting? The black-robed guard revealed a look of astonishment. He could not believe this at all. This shouldn't be, right? It should be known that not long ago, the West Great Emperor and the East Great Emperor had just fought a fierce battle. Because of this, the affiliated royal families, large, medium and small clans, as well as the rogue cultivators of the 2 regions had a huge conflict. But now, Peng Shiren suddenly made such a bold assumption. He believed that Wang Rongxia's true identity was a perfect fake identity carefully crafted by the 4 emperors after a secret meeting. Such a guess was indeed bold. However, after the black-robed guard pondered over this speculation, he felt that it was not entirely impossible. However, it was difficult to explain why the 2 great emperors, who were eager to fight the moment they saw each other, would suddenly shake hands and start to target the Peng clan together. Then, Master, should we chase them out? There's no need for that. Peng Shiren shook his head. They're already here, and they even dared to use a fake identity. Although I don't know how many great emperors were involved in crafting this fake identity, I think it's very interesting. Moreover, this servant chosen by Bateson seems to be the personal guard of a great emperor. He's quite powerful. I know that Bateson doesn't want to marry, so she must win this competition. If she's not confident of winning, she'll have to use the thing that I gave her. Then, Peng Shiren's lips curled up. His sinister expression revealed a malicious smile. On the other side, the inner courtyard of the Peng family's huge headquarters had already been set up. This was originally a place for the Peng family to cultivate, and it was very spacious. Wang Ling looked around and saw that it was actually as big as 20 football fields, and all kinds of terrain had been created inside. Deserts, lakes, forests, cliffs, in order to satisfy the Peng family's cultivation needs for different spirit roots, everything had been set up here. The Peng family's wealth was indeed astonishing for a single training field to be this big. Furthermore, this was just one of the cultivation fields in the Peng family's headquarters. The total area of the Peng family's headquarters was indeed unimaginable. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was a replica of an imperial palace. In some sense, Wang Ling felt that it was even more imposing than the imperial palaces of the 4 emperors. Peng Basin was already ready for battle. She stood on top of a stone pillar on a very high rockery, dressed in a white robe and holding the smelt bone sword in her hand. Her bai bone was also not an ordinary object. It was an object created by a famous refiner in the ancient times. It had a strong ductility and was a spirit sword that could be extended and contracted. When it was used, it could be like a python that could swallow mountains and rivers and sweep away thousands of soldiers, or it could be like a spirit snake that could twist and turn and be flexible. It was a spirit sword with a very strong comprehensive performance. But everyone knew that all-powerful spirit swords came from the Sword King world, which was still in its infancy in ancient times. At that time, the sword spirit of the smelt bone sword already had a ranking in the Sword King world. In some sense, it could be considered one of the ancestors of swords. It was just that as the Sword King world spirit swords became more and more diverse, the smelt bone sword gradually declined. Based on the current ranking of swords, the smelt bone sword couldn't even enter the top 1,000. That was to say, in a normal match, Lotus Sun's mysterious sea could indeed beat Peng Basin and her smelt bone. But if it was the ancient spirit sword that was on the same timeline against the smelt bone, in this period, the smelt bone was still a very powerful ancestor of swords. "Are you ready, Mr. Servant?" Peng Basin smiled lightly. The next second, she moved. Staring at the body of the East Great Emperor, she directly slashed at him from a strange angle. This kind of power was even more terrifying than that of a python. It was the power of a flood dragon. As it swept over, it stirred up mist and ice crystals all over the sky. As it swept over, everything in its path froze inch by inch. Did she cultivate in both ice and water magic? The East Great Emperor didn't even frown. He didn't even have the intention of summoning the sword spirit. He swung his sword at the trajectory of the smelt bone. There was a buzzing sound. Under the blade of the sword, the East Great Emperor's power alone burst into a dazzling ray of sunlight. In this brief moment, Peng Shiren suddenly stood up from his chair. He didn't know whether it was an illusion or not. Although it was only for a very short moment. He felt as if he had seen a Mahamayuri flying in the air, emitting endless light and heat. Chapter 1906. The faintly discernible Mahamayuri's Dharma form only appeared for a brief moment. Under the blazing sunlight, it disappeared in the blink of an eye. Peng Basin couldn't see the image of the Dharma form, but Peng Shiren, who was watching from the shadows, could see it clearly. His realm was higher than Peng Basin's, and he had been observing the battlefield in secret. When East Great Emperor had used this sword technique called 10,000 Li Red, his eyes had instantly widened, and his extremely intelligent mind had also come to a standstill at that moment. Peng Shiren actually had some doubts in his heart. He didn't know if he had seen wrong. Wisdom King Dharma form. This was a supreme Dharma virtual body that East Great Emperor had only recently used, and no one else should be able to use it. Could this person be East Great Emperor himself? It couldn't be. Peng Shiren couldn't believe that an emperor-level figure would willingly serve as a servant in order to put on a good show. How was this possible? Peng Shiren's mind was filled with countless thoughts for a moment. After all, this was just his wishful thinking. If the other party really was East Great Emperor himself, he shouldn't have deliberately made such a mistake for Wang Ling to see. So after careful consideration, Wang Ling felt that he was wrong. This person definitely wasn't East Great Emperor. If he was, there was no way he would make such a low-level mistake. As for how to explain the sudden appearance of the Wisdom King Dharma form, Wang Ling thought that this servant had to be East Great Emperor's personal guard, so it wouldn't be strange for him to have learned a few moves under his influence. Furthermore, from the fact that the Dharma form had disappeared in the blink of an eye, it could also be seen that summoning the Wisdom King Dharma form just now had just been a fluke. A supreme Dharma form like this consumed a lot of spirit power. Staying in the air for one more second would consume an ocean of spirit energy, which ordinary people wouldn't be able to withstand. Even if they had learned this move, they would only be able to make a slight appearance like this. This was an intense clash of thoughts from Peng Shiren's inner world. What Peng Shiren didn't know was that this Wisdom King Dharma form just now was in fact a flaw that East Great Emperor had deliberately revealed. At the same time, this was also a secret instruction from Wang Ling. He predicted that Peng Shiren must be observing the battle nearby, so he deliberately let the Great East Emperor reveal a flaw. With Peng Shiren's self-proclaimed intelligence and suspicious nature, he would definitely think of the problem from an angle that deviated from the truth. If he had concealed himself well from the beginning to the end and won against Peng Basin flawlessly, it would be easier for problems to arise. On the other side of the training ground, Peng Basin frowned slightly. This was because this servant was much stronger than she had imagined. With just a single sword technique, he was able to neutralize her preemptive attack. If she did not treat this person seriously and go all out, she was afraid that she would not be able to send this person away. She raised her spiritual power in an attempt to launch a new attack. In the next moment, the East Great Emperor felt the ground beneath his feet begin to shake, causing an earthquake. The tide of snakes coming from all directions attracted the attention of everyone present. They were small elemental snakes summoned by various elemental energies. Under the command of the sword spirit of the Wutsbone sword, they were moving forward at an astonishing speed. Carrying their own elemental energies, they surged forward and charged forward. The momentum of their charge was enough to make people shudder. This was also a scene that made the fearful onlookers collapse. These biting cold little snakes were too frightening. They gathered forward at an astonishing speed with a terrible fierceness. With the advantage of their flexible bodies, they advanced forward, ignoring the terrain and surging forward from all directions. In an instant, the first batch of snakes had already arrived beneath the East Great Emperor's feet. It had to be said that Peng Basin's ability to trigger a beast tide was indeed amazing. This was an elemental transformation technique. She used the ability of the spirit sword to transform the water and ice spirit roots that she cultivated, thus attempting to restrain all elements. These elemental snakes surging from all directions each had the ability to devour the corresponding elemental spirit energy. In other words, no matter what method the East Great Emperor used next, it would be neutralized. Unfortunately, Peng Basin had missed one point, and that was that the person she was fighting now was the emperor of a territory. Perhaps this trick would have a miraculous effect on others, but as a great emperor, the East Great Emperor had seen all kinds of situations. Playing this kind of trick in front of the Great Emperor was like waving a broadsword in front of Guan Yu. Under normal circumstances, the East Great Emperor would immediately use the vermilion bird fire shield to firmly wrap himself in all directions like an eggshell. But now that he was facing a situation where the elements were devoured, he could not use this trick so easily. Of course, he could also directly release the Supreme Peacock Wisdom King Dharma form to protect himself. It was a sacred flame that was above the 5 elements of fire, and ordinary elemental devouring spells could not resist it at all. But the East Great Emperor thought that he was playing the role of a servant now. Since he was a servant, he naturally had to act like a servant. Therefore, just as the East Great Emperor was about to be surrounded by the snake tide, he moved again and waved the royal sword in his hand. At first, the speed of the sword dance was very slow, but gradually, the sword in his hand sped up and formed a shadow. Without any spells or the power of the spirit sword itself, the sword chi that was formed when he waved the sword quickly formed a barrier made of ordinary sword chi under the high speed of the flying sword. This speed was really too fast. Peng Basin was surprised. She used her naked eyes to capture it, but she could not follow the rhythm at all. She was horrified as she stared at the elemental snakes that had entangled the East Great Emperor being beheaded. At this moment, the East Great Emperor stood in the middle of the battlefield like a high-speed yet ordinary meat grinder. He controlled the stalemate of the beast tide with his own sword chi alone. What was the background of this servant? On the other side of the secret room, Peng Shiren's expression was cold, and he no longer had the indifference he had at the beginning. His eyes flickered. Ever since the moment the faintly discernible Wisdom King Dharma form appeared, he had not spoken for a long time. The secret room was filled with a cold air. Master, Miss seems to be in a stalemate. The background of this servant is definitely not simple, the black-robed guard said. Trash. Peng Shiren snorted. He was a little angry. He did not know what Peng Basin was doing. In this situation, it was obvious that she was no match for this servant, but even now, she had not thought of using the item he had given her. That was a Supreme Saint Dharma treasure. As long as she used it at the crucial moment, she would definitely win. But the prerequisite was that there would be a certain degree of sequelae. Moreover, even Peng Shiren himself did not know what the sequelae were. He had given the Dharma treasure to Peng Basin in the hope of using his sister's body to experiment. In the end, Peng Basin's hesitant attitude really made him, as her elder brother, extremely angry. Chapter 1907. Peng Basin's reluctance to use the magic treasure he gave him made Peng Shiren's head hurt. It was a golden round pill, which was what Peng Shiren introduced to Peng Basin when he gave it to him. In fact, Peng Shiren knew very well that this was not a pill at all, but an insect sac obtained from the outer god's palace in the old world. He had been communicating with the power of the old world in an attempt to control the eternal cultivation world through the old world, but at the same time, Peng Shiren had always been a cautious person. Therefore, he thought of many ways to experiment with this power. Peng Shiren remembered that he had conducted a total of 2 experiments with the insect sac. The first time, he threw the insect sac into a glass of clean water. As a result, the powerful energy of the insect sac directly turned the glass of clean water into a glass of high-concentration cosmic liquid. He didn't dare to drink it directly, but poured the liquid on a dying spirit plant. As a result, not only did the spirit plant quickly revive and turn into a terrifying vine, but it also obtained terrifying energy. Not only that, this low-level vine actually had intelligence and called itself Ito. Peng Shiren had never seen such a situation, so he made a prompt decision to cut off Ito before it was fully developed. The second time, he experimented on a long-legged worm named Zhou Ben. As a result, this long-legged worm obtained a huge energy gain, and it also completed evolution on the original basis, becoming a terrifying creature between the cultivation world and the old world. However, it was a pity that this legworm obviously hadn't adapted to the huge energy brought by the insect sac. Before Peng Shiren could even make a move, Xiao Ben tripped on its own long legs. At that moment, the huge energy in its body fell heavily to the ground. The huge impact directly detonated this energy, and in the end, not even ashes were left. At that time, Peng Shiren sighed. If this Xiao Ben could survive successfully, with this terrifying growth ability, it would not be strange for it to be called a genius in the world of legworms. However, Peng Shiren had never experimented on humans. From the results of the first 2 experiments, he determined that the insect sac indeed had the powerful ability to become stronger and even evolve living beings. However, the energy brought by the insect sac was not something ordinary people could withstand. He had already experimented with 2 insect sacs, and now there were only 2 left. In other words, if he were to consume the insect sac, he would have another opportunity to experiment. In terms of bloodline and combat power, Peng Shiren believed that Peng Basin was the most suitable candidate. If Peng Basin had any side effects after swallowing the insect sac, it should be the most similar to his and also the most obvious. In this case, after he swallowed the insect sac himself, he could prepare in advance and be on guard. The scene returned to the scene of the battle. After several consecutive defeats, Peng Basin's confidence had clearly fallen to a low point. She never thought that a servant would be so difficult to deal with. Peng Basin didn't want to get married at all. The reason why she held this large-scale marriage ceremony was so that the man she liked would have some awareness. Even though Peng Basin was clearly aware that with the awkward blood bond between them, becoming Dao companions was bound to be nonsense, as a young woman, she still wished to see the man she liked get jealous because of her. However, it was a pity that the man still chose to observe the battle in the dark even though they were already at the door. Peng Basin knew that the person had given her a golden pill. If she swallowed it, she would have a high chance of winning. However, Peng Basin didn't want to do that now. She was looking forward to getting injured, and even more looking forward to seeing Peng Shiren come forward to save her after she was injured. However, from the looks of it now, all of this seemed to be wishful thinking on her part. Peng Basin had once fantasized that Peng Shiren would have a good impression of her. She was even willing to go through the cruelest blood refinement array for Peng Shiren and change her bloodline completely. She wanted to have nothing to do with the Peng family at all. However, Peng Basin now realized that she had made a wrong choice. You don't have to think about your master and go easy on me. After fighting for so long, I'm just wasting my spiritual power for no reason. To me, this kind of battle is completely boring. Moreover, this is also disrespecting me. After the last sword strike, Peng Basin and East Emperor quickly distanced themselves. She stood at the mouth of the frozen waterfall in the distance, releasing an extremely cold aura from her body. Peng Basin wasn't stupid. She knew that Peng Shiren definitely had a purpose for giving her that victory elixir. She didn't know the origin of this elixir, but believed that the man she liked wouldn't use it to harm her. Peng Shiren still hadn't made a move, and she wasn't East Emperor's match at all. Peng Basin didn't want to get married like this, so in her despair, she took out the golden insect sac. Is it finally going to start? Peng Shiren was overjoyed when he saw this scene. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. When Peng Basin put the insect sac in her mouth, it was obvious that all the veins in her body had popped up, and traces of blood flow could be clearly seen through her fair, jade-like skin. This was the power of the old world, which Wang Ling instantly sensed. Before this, he could clearly sense that Peng Basin was hesitating about whether or not to swallow this bug sac. Moreover, it was clear that she had been kept in the dark and had no idea what this bug sac was at all. But now, she had already swallowed this bug sac into her stomach. In an instant, her fair skin was covered in a dense cobweb of veins that had popped up. In an extremely short period of time, even her body turned jet black. She screamed in pain, and her jet black hair grew like the fur of a ferocious beast. Her aura and battle strength kept increasing under the effect of the insect sac. This time, East Emperor was completely stupefied. When he had fought Goddess Jiao Yang earlier, even if she had swallowed an elixir given by West Emperor, her strength hadn't increased at such a terrifying rate. Now, Peng Basin had only swallowed an elixir, and her battle strength had increased at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just over 10 seconds, she had reached the level of a heavenly ancestor. At that moment, Wang Ying finally couldn't help saying directly, "Someone else has changed." The current situation was obviously not something that the great East Emperor could deal with. Thus, Wang Ying spoke directly. On the other side, Wang Ling, who had been silent all this time, was already ready to go. His sister should be used to feel sorry for him. In his opinion, a person like Peng Shiren who deserved to die, should be sent straight to hell. Chapter 1908. Something was wrong. Peng Basin's condition was very bad. Her body had become slender under the surging energy in her body, and the protruding veins were clearly imprinted on the surface of her skin. She was clearly such a beautiful girl, but under the stimulation of the power of the great old world, even her appearance had changed dramatically. Her white Taoist robe had been completely torn apart, and her lower limbs had turned into a string of indescribable slender purple tentacles that rolled outwards. From afar, it looked like a skirt in the dark night, exuding a terrifying aura. How could this be? This was a scene that no one had expected except for Peng Shiren. The power of the great old world was too terrifying. It had directly modified the genes of Peng Basin, a human cultivator, and turned her into a witch of the great old days in the dark night. This allowed her to have the power of the outer god in her body, and it was erupting uncontrollably. The color of the sky had changed, and the dusk sky was covered with a layer of scarlet red that was full of slaughter and terror. It was so strange that it made people feel a strong spiritual pressure. Great! So beautiful! Basin! My good sister! Peng Shiren was overjoyed. Such a huge blessing made him feel extremely excited, and he looked at Peng Basin, who had already become a monster, with admiration in his eyes. To be honest, he had never thought that Peng Basin was very beautiful, but now Peng Shiren felt that she was already a perfect human work of art. Protect Master. Seeing this, everyone in the battle sect had a tacit understanding. Monk Jin Deng, who was playing the role of Great Southern Emperor, took the initiative to pull her back, and everyone worked together to form a formation. On the surface, it looked like they were protecting her, but in reality, they were secretly constructing a solid barrier that firmly enveloped the entire Peng family mansion. This was an extremely powerful spiritual energy barrier that gathered the spiritual energy of everyone in the battle sect, and it was airtight. Although they didn't know if it would be able to deal with the energy attack of the mutated Peng Basin, this kind of protection was still necessary. At the very least, it could buy time for the surrounding wandering cultivators to escape. This was because outside the battlefield, many experienced wandering cultivators had already realized the danger of the Peng family mansion seeping out. Something's wrong. Why did the energy in the Peng family mansion suddenly increase so much? It's just a competition. Is there a need? Since ancient times, rogue cultivators' ability to predict danger was always on point. If there was danger, they would run and not face it head-on. This was a great strategy that allowed them to step onto the path of immortality. With a few rogue cultivators taking the lead, the onlookers quickly dispersed as well, not daring to stay any longer. Only the core members of the battle sect were still playing their roles and watching from the sidelines. Even the steward of the Peng family was horrified. Peng Basin's outburst was something he did not expect. What was even more unexpected was the servants brought by Mr. Wang Rongxia, who came to marry Peng Basin. If he was not mistaken, these servants had just joined hands to set up an extremely thick barrier that directly enveloped the entire Peng family's main residence. This was not something that ordinary servants could do. "You are?" the Peng family's head steward asked in astonishment. "Be quiet. Can't you see that your young miss is in danger? Our master's strongest servant is saving her," Xiang Yi, who played the role of the Great West Emperor, said. In his original world, there were also battle records of him fighting with the old Sun system beings. One win, one draw. Xiang Yi had always harbored a deep grudge against such creatures. Now that he had a chance to observe them up close, he felt that it was an excellent opportunity to learn from Wang Ling. The Peng family's head steward was instantly speechless. Indeed, the current situation was already out of his control. The moment he saw Peng Basin go berserk, he had hoped that Peng Shiren would appear. However, no one in the Peng family responded to this sudden situation. The Peng family's main residence had served the Peng family for many years, and he had almost instantly figured out the stakes involved. He knew that all this might be for Peng Shiren's benefit. But why on earth was this so? Peng Basin was clearly his younger sister, and his biological sister at that moment. At that moment, the Peng family's head steward frowned deeply as he stared at the sky, which had collapsed under the weight of darkness. The entire Peng family's main residence was now sealed off. It was as if a powerful force from the old Japanese world could dominate everything here, blocking out everything and isolating it from the rest of the world. It was clear that Peng Basin had gained tremendous power from the insect sac, but at the same time, she was also suffering endless pain. With Peng Basin at the center, the energy that was wantonly emitted stirred the air, crushed everything, and swallowed up the space nearby. This was a power of annihilation. Everything that got close to her disintegrated in an instant. Level 3 Heavenly Ancestor. In less than 3 minutes, her realm had gone from the original Tao God realm to Heavenly Ancestor in one fell swoop, and it was still climbing. Wang Ling knew that he couldn't wait any longer. He had to find a way to suppress Peng Basin. Right now, Peng Basin was like a balloon filled with air, using her human cultivator body to prop up the power of the old Japanese world. If he let this power continue to grow, the consequences would be unthinkable. Heavenly Ancestor. Basin. You're more outstanding and beautiful than ever now. Inside the secret room, Peng Shiren was secretly excited. He watched Peng Basin's transformation with fascination, and at the same time, looked forward to the moment when Peng Basin crushed this servant in front of him. No matter how extraordinary this Wang Rongxia's background was, or how extraordinary this servant was, in the end, a servant was just a servant. In the current situation where Peng Basin was infinitely powerful, it didn't matter what the background of this servant who was acting on behalf of Wang Rongxia was. So what if she was a great emperor? Even if she was a great emperor, she would still die. Bzzzt. There was a bang. Peng Basin made her move. The tentacle skirt under her feet suddenly spread out to completely cover the area in front of her. These tentacles were made of highly dense energy foam, and just moving through the air carried a terrifying power of annihilation. Wang Ling released his heart sword, and the sword intent was traceless as he tried to cut off all the tentacles. This was a sword intent constructed of mental strength, but the Peng Basin in front of him completely ignored it, and continued to attack with her original will. There was a reason for her fearlessness. Not only could her tentacle skirt affect reality, it could also destroy mental strength. Wang Ling had dealt with the outer gods of the old Japanese world before. Although it hadn't been a direct confrontation, he had fought against the god of the grave, who had also inherited the outer god's bloodline. However, he had found that the mental strength of the outer gods was generally extremely terrifying. Although he still couldn't tell what kind of outer god power Peng Basin was currently affected by, this strong sense of oppression was still familiar to him. At that moment, he looked up at the sky and took a deep breath. The heart sword attack just now had failed. But it didn't matter at all. He just needed to increase the mental strength of the heart sword. He decided to first magnify it 100 million times. Chapter 1909. The traceless heart sword was a supreme secret technique of sword Dao, and could not be used by those who had reached the great perfection of sword Dao. As the name implied, this was a technique that softened one's mental energy into reality, and thus transformed invisible spirit power into sharp sword intent. It was an attack on the level of consciousness, but it could affect reality. In other words, if you were stabbed by the heart sword, not only would you suffer a mental attack, you would also suffer an equal amount of physical damage. In the old world, most outer gods had extraordinary mental power, and ordinary cultivators couldn't contend with them. However, Wang Ling had always been most willing to try defeating the other party in the domain they were most familiar with. Because Wang Ling didn't believe that he was truly invincible, and believed that he couldn't be a true hexagonal warrior, and that there had to be something he was weak in. In his many battles in the past, Wang Ling had already experienced countless confrontations on the physical and magical levels. Unfortunately, he hadn't lost even once. So this time, he was faced with a new challenge. Outer gods were old bosses of the Spirit series. Although Wang Ling had defeated the Grave God last time, the Grave God's inheritance of Sothatha's outer god Taoism wasn't complete. This time, Peng Basin was ambushed by Peng Shiren and swallowed the insect sac. Even though he couldn't tell what kind of outer god's orthodoxy it was, Peng Basin still couldn't figure it out. Although Wang Ling couldn't tell what outer god Taoism this Peng Basin's wantonly surged mental power, Wang Ling could already sense that Peng Basin was stronger than the Grave God back then. Although the Grave God's inherited Sothatha's Taoism was equally powerful, the other party's strength lay in its control over time and space. In terms of mental power alone, Peng Basin's growth rate was even more astonishing than the Grave God's. After Wang Ling's first tentative wave of the heart sword failed under the powerful mental fluctuations, a second wave of 100 million times the power of the heart sword swiftly formed around him, and directly turned into a lotus sword defense that was impenetrable. Wang Ling stared at Peng Basin, whose body continued to expand, and without the slightest hesitation, he suddenly shot out a 100 million times the power of the heart sword. In the air in front of him, profound runes from the old world lit up at the same time. These were the outer mental barriers that had blocked Wang Ling's first wave of the heart sword attack. There was a loud bang. This time, the heart sword intent that was 100 million times stronger destroyed all these ancient runes effortlessly. In an instant, they completely collapsed like dried twigs. The Peng family's main residence shook violently. With the battlefield as the center, violent fluctuations spread out in all directions, collapsing dozens of palaces. The chief steward of the Peng family was dumbfounded. The buildings of the Peng family's main residence were all made of superior materials that could even resist the impact of Dao God spells. He never thought that they would be as brittle as tofu pudding. The moment the outer god's mental barrier collapsed, Peng Basin let out a pained roar, and the gradually expanding bloodline of the Great Old Sun in her body showed an unyielding attitude. The creatures of the Great Old Sun had always regarded human cultivators as inferior creatures, and Wang Ling's resistance completely activated the contempt and anger flowing in the outer god's bloodline. Peng Basin's power surged again. This time, it directly reached an astonishing level 6 heavenly ancestor, and directly rose by 3 minor realms, which Wang Ling found incredible. Her body swelled even more than before, and she was no longer as slender as a twig. From a thin dark witch, she had turned into a gigantic lump of flesh that floated in the air like a mountain. Tentacles covered the bottom of the lump of flesh, and mucus with a terrifying density of energy dripped down along them. At the very top of the lump of flesh, Wang Ling could clearly see Peng Basin's face roaring in pain. Sayanagusi. East Great Emperor suddenly said at that moment. As an emperor, he had always been on guard against the revival of the power of the Great Old Sun, so he had done a lot of personal research on the ancient Great Old World. At first, he hadn't been able to tell what kind of outer god power Peng Basin had inherited. Now that he saw this outer god body that was similar to what was described in the ancient books, a name instantly slipped out of his mouth. Among the outer gods, it was a terrifying existence known as the Dark Mother Goddess, who possessed supreme mental dominance and even the ability to nurture the endless power of the Great Old Ones and the ability to restore life. Moreover, East Great Emperor was sure that Peng Basin's body wouldn't explode because she had inherited Sayanagusi's outer god bloodline. This was because Peng Basin had already entered the intermediate form, and Sayanagusi's bloodline had already completely contaminated her. Thanks to Sayanagusi's powerful life force, Peng Basin's life would be spared. But it was clear that Peng Basin's will hadn't been completely devoured, and she was still desperately resisting this declining outer god bloodline. But in this extreme state, in order to relieve the pain in her body, she instinctively wanted to release this power in her body. And so, even more destruction and attack occurred. Just as the 100 million times heart sword broke through the outermost barrier and continued forward, Wang Ling saw the tentacles hanging down from the flesh suddenly move. They directly plunged deep into the ground, and then pierced Peng Lai's core at an extremely fast speed. It was like countless straws piercing the planet at the same time to directly squeeze out all its energy. Once the planet's energy was completely drained, the whole planet would directly disintegrate and turn into cosmic dust. It was obvious that the plants attached to Peng Lai would instantly wither and turn yellow. With the Peng family's headquarters as the center, this wither would directly spread to every corner of Peng Lai until the planet's energy was completely drained. Under this kind of energy extraction, the 100 million times heart sword in the end didn't achieve the effect Wang Ling wanted. Although his heart sword kept advancing, Peng Basin kept building barriers to weaken the sword's power, so it was impossible for the 100 million times heart sword to reach the core. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. But running into a wall twice in a row didn't change his expression in the slightest. After all, it was only 100 million times, which was far from his peak. He could see that Sayanagus had already entered a defensive state. This Dark Mother God was trying to rely on squeezing out the planet's energy to reach a higher level of bloodline between herself and Peng Basin. When that time came, she would be able to use the Dark Mother God's power to continuously produce terrifying rulers of the old days. When that time came, the recovery plan for the old world would be mostly successful. But something that Sayanagus hadn't expected happened very quickly. Because at that moment, the human youngster standing in front of it slowly closed his eyes. There was a deathly silence at first, and then a horrifying scene happened in the next moment. This time, the youngster's heart sword wasn't aimed at the huge flesh that blotted out the sky, but directly followed the tentacles to the ground. Boom! With just one sword strike, Peng Lai had already been pierced through. Sayanagus gripped Peng Basin's body, and her entire being started to go into a trance. It couldn't believe that a human cultivator youngster could actually do this. Then, in the next second, an even more unbelievable scene happened. Wang Ling bent down and crouched over the hole that had been pierced through. His sharp arm reached in through the hole and then extended infinitely. This was the true hand of God, which directly reached into the depths of the hole. Then, it directly grabbed the tentacles that Sayanagus was absorbing the energy from the planet's core. Chapter 1910. In the face of these mental barriers, Wang Ling had been thinking about the possibility of breaking through them head-on. The 100 million times heart sword had only broken through the outermost barrier, so if he wanted to directly break through to the core, he would need to increase his strength. But the problem in front of him was that he didn't know how much strength he needed to increase. If he increased it too much, Peng Basin might die in a second. Wang Ling didn't want to see that happen. His original intention was to save Peng Basin and get her out of her pain as soon as possible. If he directly destroyed her, the problem would become much simpler. Thus, in this critical moment, Wang Ling was quick-witted. He directly reached out and aimed at Peng Lai's star core, then directly plunged into the ground and grabbed outer god Sayanagis's tentacle. This roundabout attack instantly allowed Wang Ling to regain control of the battlefield. Like a cat that had been caught by its tail, he directly broke through to the front. Hum! An ear-piercing sound came from the void. It came from Sayanagus. It sounded like the angry roar of the mother goddess of darkness, but in fact, Sayanagus was chanting in her own way, using the language of the great old world. This terrifying outer god was erupting in anger. Furthermore, it could already tell that the East Great Emperor in front of it wasn't the real East Great Emperor, and knew that there was another soul in his body. So it roared in the language of the old world and lashed out at Wang Ling for his rudeness in grabbing its tentacle. It swore a dark oath to pull Wang Ling's soul out of the East Great Emperor's body. In the next second, there was a boom. A terrifying mental fluctuation was instantly transmitted through the tentacle that Wang Ling had grabbed, and like an electric current, it directly flowed up Wang Ling's fingers. If anyone below the Tao ancestor realm came into direct contact with this mental fluctuation, they would immediately feel a numbness spread from their fingers to their whole body. This would lead to hallucinations, and in more serious cases, they would directly lose consciousness and their souls would leave their bodies, entering a state where their spirit and flesh would be separated. At that time, these terrifying outer gods from the old world would be able to nibble away at their souls. But what surprised Cyanegus was that this spiritual fluctuation didn't have the slightest effect on the youth in front of her. She was puzzled. She couldn't understand what kind of existence the young soul living in the East Great Emperor's body was. The soul of a 16 or 17-year-old and the terrifying strength of an ancient monster. Cyanegus couldn't understand how a cultivator with a human body could be so powerful. In the secret chamber, Peng Shiren also stared at the image projected by the magic treasure. He could not help but stand up from his chair. He stared at the servant, his face trembling. He had never thought that a servant could be so powerful. This person. Just who is he? Peng Shiren's mind was in a mess. He worshipped the power from the old world infinitely. In fact, he wanted to use the power of the old world to combine it with the path of cultivation that he had mastered. Through the combination of the two techniques, he could learn from each other's strengths and make up for his shortcomings. Thus, he could surpass ordinary cultivators with the body of a cultivator and become the first person in history. He would become a supreme existence. Yes, his ultimate goal was to surpass Tao ancestor Wang. He would become a legend in the history of human cultivators. But Peng Shiren had never thought that the dream that he had been chasing for so many years would actually be beaten to it. He was clearly a human cultivator, but he was using his own strength to resist the power of the outer god from the old world. Peng Shiren could never have imagined this. At that moment, looking at the scene in front of him, he felt pain in his cheeks, as if two resounding slaps had been slapped across his face. Impossible. This is a outer god. Even if Tao ancestor Wang were here in person, he might not be able to defeat him. Peng Shiren was a little panicked and astonished by Wang Ling's method. At that moment, he had already vaguely sensed that the young man standing here dueling with the outer god wasn't an ordinary servant. It was even possible that this person had some other great unsolved secret. At that moment, he pinched the tentacle and felt Cyanegus's spiritual power seep into his palm. But not only did it not break his spirit, it was like pouring coffee into his mouth, making his mental state even better than before. This couldn't be considered a mental attack at all. On the contrary, it was a kind of spiritual recharge for him. At that moment, he thought that if he used this to recharge himself when he reviewed how to keep his marks down before an exam, it would be much more effective than drinking 8 walnuts. He had thought that this match would be the same as before, and that the more he fought, the more boring it would become. Who would have thought that this tentacle would instead make him even more spirited? This time, Wang Ling didn't even yawn. He directly grabbed the outer god's tentacle which he had caught from Star River Penglai and pulled it out of the ground. Then, a horrifying scene happened. Wang Ling directly dragged the tentacle with his tiny body and directly pulled Cyanegus up. Wang Ling gripped the mountainous mass of dark black flesh in his hand along with the tentacle. There was a loud boom. Dragging the tentacle, Wang Ling started to spin Cyanegus on the spot. He didn't show any mercy as he directly smashed Cyanegus left and right with a very relaxed expression on his face. It was hard to imagine that a human teenager would actually grab an outer god's tentacle and rub it against the ground without any dignity at all. Everyone felt a strong sense of suffocation. Wang Ling was too strong, worthy of being a man with the bearing of an immortal king. His every move could make heaven and earth tremble, and the entire Penglai planet tremble. Everyone watching the battle was so shocked that their jaws dropped to the ground. As Xianagus was continuously smashed back and forth by Wang Ling, the space here shattered and the void collapsed. This poor mother goddess of darkness was so beaten that she couldn't even speak. Before she could let out those sharp cries of anger, Wang Ling had directly swallowed them back into his stomach. Of course, apart from sighing at Wang Ling's heaven-defying strength, everyone present was also astonished by the outer god's astonishing amount of blood. Because this blood was indeed thick, how could a normal cultivator withstand a single slap from Wang Ling? Even someone as strong as Monk Golden Lamp could only withstand 10 of Wang Ling's palms at most. This outer god, Xianagus, had already been repeatedly smashed by Wang Ling more than 20 times and was almost smashed into a meat patty, but she still looked skillful and at ease, which was indeed frightening. After smashing her for the 30th time, Wang Ling exercised the muscles in his neck. He took off East Great Emperor's outer clothes and only wore the white undershirt, then rolled up his sleeves. Warm up, over. At that moment, he stared at Xianagus, who looked like he had already passed out on the ground. It was an extremely short sentence, but it caused everyone present in Pengshiren, who was in the secret chamber, to be horrified. What had they just heard? Warm up. That magnificent scene of him beating up an outer god just now was actually just a warm-up. Damn it, he had done it again. Chapter 1911. Who on earth was it? The moment Wang Ling took off his robe and rolled up his sleeves, it was as if Pengshiren saw the back of a god radiating brilliant light. He couldn't see who the person in this body was, but he could directly sense the glowing, powerful soul, which was the key to maintaining this body's invincibility. In the face of an outer god, a sage body was clearly not enough. As a great emperor, East Great Emperor's body had to be tempered by the vermilion bird fire every day, and his body had long reached the level of a sage body before he had become an emperor. Since then, he had been training his body day after day, and the strength of his body had continuously increased. This kind of body was indeed much stronger than that of the ancient cultivators of the royal family. However, in the battle with the outer god, Wang Ling could still clearly feel that this body wasn't strong enough. During the process of smashing the outer god just now, East Great Emperor's body had also felt a faint pain because of the tremendous force that had attacked the outer god and the backlash. But it was only East Great Emperor who was in pain, because he was the owner of this body. Although he was controlling it, he was also a little irritated by the East Great Emperor's wails. Thus, he had taken off his robe and planned to use a secret technique on this body to make it stronger than before. At that moment, East Great Emperor's upper body glowed with golden light, and runes appeared all over it. These weren't spirit talismans, nor were they mysterious characters from ancient times, nor were they the characters of any tribe in the universe. Instead, they exuded a powerful divinity that seemed to come from the origin of the universe. Mark of an immortal king. Wang Ying was secretly astonished and horrified. Even he hadn't expected Wang Ling to use this method at a critical moment. This was a secret technique that combined a life-bonded Dharma idol with a designated soul and body, and was completely under Wang Ling's control. Once the fusion was achieved, a glittering mark of divinity would appear on the body. As Wang Ling's shadow, Wang Ying was well aware of the origin of this technique. If the person he was facing wasn't a strong enemy, there was no way Wang Ling would use this technique at this time. He had only used his natal Dharma idol once a long time ago, and at that time, it hadn't reached the point of directly combining it with his natal Dharma idol in battle, and had mostly been used to intimidate and awe. This time, when Wang Ying saw that East Great Emperor's body was densely covered with marks of an immortal king, she clearly knew that Wang Ling was serious. He wasn't just joking when he said the warm-up was over. Buzz. With the support of the mark of an immortal king, the East Great Emperor's fair and delicate body was strengthened even more. His body seemed to have become the center of the universe. Vaguely, they could see the sun, moon, and stars revolving around the East Great Emperor's body. With the support of the mark of an immortal king, his physical body had evolved into an immortal king body. Directly nurturing the embryonic form of the universe within one's physical body was horrifying. Xiao. In the next moment, the East Great Emperor moved. His speed was extremely fast, and his boundless magic power allowed him to approach Cyanegus without any hindrance. Rumble. With a stomp of his foot, the ground collapsed. It was as if an infinite number of cosmic stars had crashed into the ground from beyond the heavens, causing the ground under his feet to quake and sparks to fly like a volcanic eruption. Endless sacred fires collided and turned into huge mushroom clouds that boiled over. Cyanegus roared in pain as she was burned, and her tentacles were scorched. Wang Ling's foot directly stepped on the stomach of the mother goddess of darkness, instantly setting her body ablaze, and the flames spread along the tentacles to the lower half of her body. In that instant, Cyanegus could be seen spitting out a lot of mucus, which she used to fill the sacred fires on her body. Although it looked like she was being one-sidedly beaten, she didn't give up resisting. Her powerful self-healing ability allowed her burnt tentacles to regrow. At the same time, Wang Ling also noticed that Cyanegus had spat out many pitch-black meatballs. These were creatures that she had nurtured. In the first wave, there were more than 100 meatballs the size of mountains, and they immediately split open a few seconds after they hit the ground. These were creatures of the past that had been bred from her mother's body. They were terrifying behemoths called black goats. Even in their infancy, each of them was shockingly large and had amazing battle strength, as if they could crush everything with their iron hooves. At the same time, in Wang Ling's opinion, this kind of reproductive ability was indeed amazing. Even when she had been completely beaten by him, she could still breed so many monsters. This was what was terrifying about this mother goddess of darkness. If Wang Ling hadn't been here, even the great emperor might not have been able to withstand this wave of attack. These black goats were already very amazing in their infancy. As long as there were 10 of them, it wouldn't be a problem at all for them to destroy Penglai. But now, there were hundreds of them being bred and unbred here. The mother goddess of darkness had a powerful reproductive ability that allowed her to continuously create armies of black goats. At the same time, these black goats also had amazing reproductive abilities. Unfortunately, in the end, Cyanegus had miscalculated, because the person it was facing at that moment wasn't an ordinary person. Wang Ling moved extremely quickly. He directly grabbed a black goat in the air and unceremoniously slammed it into Cyanegus. Wang Ling controlled the mountain-sized goat effortlessly with the power of cosmic gravity. He just stood where he was and slowly raised his hands. In an instant, the imposing manner of a sovereign descending upon the world flourished. Everyone was stupefied. No one had ever seen Wang Ling use a great spell in succession. In the past, this would have been a problem that could be solved with a few slaps at most. At that moment, the youngster stood in the middle of the field with the help of East Great Emperor's body. His every movement exuded the peerless and incomparable might of an immortal king. It was as if time and space here had been cut off, and countless black goats were directly lifted up by Wang Ling. Golden light seeped out from their bodies and slowly surged along their bodies. It seeped out from every pore of their bodies and cracked open, crack. The next second, the moment Wang Ling's palms closed, their bodies instantly exploded. Too strong. Is he still human? After being branded with a mark of an immortal king, East Great Emperor no longer felt pain in his body. Not only did he stop screaming, but he also remained quiet and gasped the entire time. This senior Wang's strength was beyond his expectations. Those were hundreds of black goats. The army of outer gods, which had been bred from the body of the mother goddess of darkness, had descended densely here. They had thought that they would be able to trample Penglai to pieces. In the end, they hadn't been bouncing around for long before they were all caught in the air and turned to dust under Wang Ling's long-range explosions. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.